I get death threats from agency recruiters almost every single week.
We're trying to replace human recruiters, not work with them.
This is Alfie Whattam from Alfa AI and Matt Florescu from Kablio. These guys are the disruptors of the recruitment industry. They're not building tools, they're building AI native recruiters.
Our AI recruiter Lisa works 24/7, never asks for a pay rise, costs like a cup of a coffee a day.
I think it's going to be a bloodbath.
We explored how candidates are beginning to admit they prefer AI interviews.
Recruitment leaders, founders, they should be looking at what startups and founders are doing with AI.
I disagree with you. The market will split into fully AI recruiters. People prefer speaking to AI models because there's less social pressure.
Bias doesn't disappear, it evolves with technology. This isn't hype, it's happening now.
Innovate within the next 6 months or die and get left behind. Working from the offices of OpenAI and Google, some of the things I saw just made me.
What are the biggest challenges that you see AI recruiters facing?
Our AI recruiter detects deepfake, and we've traced a lot of these back to like North Korea.
Talk to me about your ambitions.
Part of the reason why I do what I do is because
I'm very much of the belief that
Gentlemen, nice to see you both.
you too.
Great opportunity to sit down with two of the disruptors of the recruitment space. As you'll know, I've been spending time with people to really understand what the impact of AI is going to be on the recruitment industry. And you guys are sat at the frontier of technology and how it may be disrupting it. And maybe you can introduce yourselves and just tell us a bit about the mission that you're on.
Sure. My name's Alfie. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Alfa AI, and we built Lisa. So Lisa is the world's leading AI recruiter agent. So just imagine ChatGPT, but for hiring. So you type in what you need, and then Lisa will start to source candidates by messaging and in-mailing and posting job advertisements, and then screening by reviewing resumes and doing video interviews in 30 different languages, and then scoring everybody, putting all the notes onto over 100 different ATS integrations. So really what a person does, like myself, I was a recruiter for a decade. I did that job of sourcing, screening, shortlisting, and we've turned that workflow into a AI agent which does the task 10 times faster, 90% lower cost, and just delivers a much better candidate experience than the old traditional way.
Great, good stuff. And you're earlier in the journey, Matt?
that's right, yes. So I'm the CEO and founder of Kablio AI. Similar mission to Alfie company, but focused on construction, clean energy, and the blue-collar worker. So very simple, just trying to replace human recruiters, an AI that builds a relationship with the workers, builds a relationship with the hiring managers, and orchestrates the hiring process faster and cheaper.
Cool, good. But your background's not recruitment.
My background is not recruitment, no. Previously, I worked at American Express, and before that, Accenture, so big corporations, fintech, consulting. No background in recruitment, no background in construction or clean energy. I've always been very fascinated by talent. I've always been very fascinated by the built environment, and I followed these interests and just went down a rabbit hole.
Good, brings you here.
Yeah.
Most unlikely of places sat in front of me.
It feels like a natural progression, actually. So not too weird.
Yeah, good. Well, look, thank you for taking the time, guys. I guess probably a really great place to start is just about why you're doing what you're doing. Does that make sense? Why is it you guys have taken an agentic AI first approach to addressing hiring? Do you want to kick us off, Alfie?
Sure. I think that recruitment in many, many ways, and I think recruiters will be the first to admit this, it's slow, it's very manual, it's very tedious, it's very expensive, and it's not necessarily a recruiter's fault. It's just the way it had to be because it was a very service-driven, human labor type position, and that's just what it was. But really in the past 3 to 6 months, all of that has started to change, and in a much faster and greater way than anybody could have possibly predicted. It's both exciting and incredibly scary at the same time. And a lot of those problems really can start to be fixed through agentic workers, AI employees, digital humans, whatever term you want to use. The marketer in me would go crazy with some of the labeling that we could throw on this stuff. But really what we're talking about is looking at all the broken areas of the recruiting process, whether that's sourcing, whether that's screening, whether that's shortlisting, and using artificial intelligence to augment that process so it's much faster, better, cheaper, more accurately, and a much better candidate experience, basically. I don't know about AI replacing recruiters, certainly in the next year or two, but a recruiter using AI will certainly replace one who doesn't. And it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I think very, very soon, a recruiter not using AI, it will be like a human not having a smartphone, or a hiring manager not using LinkedIn. It's just going to be a very, very difficult place to compete. If you have AI, it's like showing up to a knife fight with a gun, and you're going to win every single time.
How about yourself? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Because AI represents an opportunity to automate recruitment work, make it faster and cheaper. It's as simple as that. All work that a human recruiter does will soon be done, can be done by an AI. So it's just a massive business opportunity, and it's a massive opportunity for our end customers, employers and workers.
Help me understand who your target customers are as well. So just to help frame what you're doing, who are you doing it for?
Yeah, we work with some of the leading recruiting agencies in the world now. I spent 5 years at Hayes myself as a trainee, working my way up to be the UK national lead, where I was running software recruitment. Had a huge team of recruiters, and we were all doing things the traditional manual way, and that's what I'm looking at, automating a large part of that process effectively. So we sell to these staffing agencies to make them AI powered, and then we sell to a lot of end companies as well. A lot of businesses in the UK, from food delivery firms to technology businesses to fintech and beyond. When we started, most positions that were put into our recruiter agent were what you'd expect it to be, like an admin assistant or a receptionist or a truck driver. But more and more, the positions have got a lot more specialist, to the point now where the number one search on our platform is for a software engineer. So we work with all types of companies, from staffing agencies to end hiring companies, who all want to achieve the same outcome, basically, which is to find the best candidates in the fastest time period for the least amount of money, and deliver the best candidate experience to all of those people.
I myself am focused on construction clean energy, so general contractors, and we're starting with firms that have 20 plus employees all the way up to 1,000.
So you're targeting the end customer themselves?
Yes, we're trying to replace human recruiters, not work with them. So yes, we're working with the end customers, with the employers who are making the hires themselves.
So I guess one of the questions, right, is I often say to recruitment leaders that I speak to and founders, and that in fact broader than recruitment actually, that they need to not look at their existing competition, their traditional and legacy competitors, as to what they're doing in AI, but they should be looking at what the startups and founders are doing with AI. So what you guys are doing, because there's a difference between infusing AI into a business, and there's the other end of the scale where you're innovating the way in which an outcome is achieved. In this case, how a hire is being made. What do you think on that advice?
I think you're right. If you're building an existing legacy system and trying to sprinkle AI on top, the foundations are always going to be legacy and broken and inefficient. Whereas if somebody comes along and they build something ground up using artificial intelligence and the latest large language models, it just allows that system to be set up with machine learning, so it gets smarter and better and more accurate as time goes on, to the point where you can create these self-improving loops effectively within it, which are really, really hard to do if you're trying to like sprinkle AI on top of a already broken process. Yep. So I think it's quite painful for businesses to do this, but I think in the long term, kind of scrapping what they were historically doing and rebuilding from the ground up from a first principles perspective is going to ultimately allow them to be a lot more successful than just trying to fix holes in like an existing system using ChatGPT.
When you say it's hard, what do you mean by that? You said the self-learning loops.
Sure.
That particular bit's hard. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, just finding good machine learning talent who really understand how to solve these problems these people are very, very hard to find. Even with AI recruiters, it's a very difficult job. And then the compensation is absolutely insane because of companies like OpenAI and Meta that are throwing, millions and millions at some of these people to get them to work on their specific applications. So it's really hard to find these people, and then it's really hard to keep them and maintain them. And it's also hard from the perspective of if you've got an existing system in place, like that migration of like ripping something out and putting something brand new in place. It's a lot more short term, it's a lot more expensive and time consuming to do that rather than just try to patch it together with some off the shelf tool, basically.
I disagree with you. So I think the market will split into fully AI recruiters and AI-enabled recruitment agencies. I wouldn't advise traditional recruitment firms to look at companies like Kablio or Alfa AI, just because we're building end-to-end AI systems, which are super difficult to do. I'd say just focus on embedding AI into all your processes, automating as much as possible, and focusing on clients who value a human touch and a relationship, because there's always going to be a market for that.
Do you think so?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, 100%.
Why do you think that?
I think people get comfort from knowing that a human is involved in decision making. Imagine making a key hire in a company and that hire going like awfully wrong, and you'd be in a very difficult position to just pin the blame on an autonomous AI system, right? You need a human in the loop who's accountable for that decision.
Where do you sit on that, Alfie? I mean, the bit that I guess there's several bits you've spoken about there. The first bit, though, is around this kind of concept that human connection is valued.
I certainly believe it is, and I hope it is, at least. I mean, there's certain things which can be automated, which we're creating workflows to do so. But I wouldn't want to hire anybody for my company without first actually having a conversation with them and finding out if we have the right culture match and we actually get along. And I don't think any AI will ever automate that process entirely. And it might do for some companies, and that might be fine for certain types of positions, and that might be fine. But for most positions out there, you're still going to want to have a conversation with them. Now, I feel like a lot of the elements of that process in terms of how do we find those candidates, how do we do the initial screen, how do we deliver you a list of the people that you actually want to speak to, that we can already automate and do that process way better than any human can do. But I wouldn't want to automate the last part of that around building that relationship and getting them on board. In fact, I want more of that to happen, and that's why we're replacing all of that initial work to begin with. So you can have more time available to do the work that matters and building those human relationships and connections. With that said, it clearly is going from a viewpoint right now of it being human to human plus AI agent, and there might be a time where it just becomes the AI agent, and then the human is no longer needed in that process. I feel like trying to predict things that are beyond 3 to 5 years, it's just like I'm just guessing at that point. So I won't do that. But like I certainly believe that humans are more perhaps important than the viewpoint that AI will just completely replace recruiters.
Yes.
And I'm probably one of the leading voices in that world of AI agents for recruiting, but I just don't quite see it at the level of some people are believing it to be.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. But what we're talking about there is about customers valuing the human connection in the recruitment process from an agency perspective.
Sure.
That customer would still be in charge and responsible for making that hire, right? Does a customer still attribute value to that in the hiring process? More importantly, at what's the tipping point of which they're still prepared to pay for it?
Sure.
Because there's a cost to it, right?
Yeah. I think there will always be a segment in the market that will value a human relationship with their AI, but a bigger and bigger proportion of the recruit market will be done by end-to-end AI recruitment systems.
I feel like you're being kind there, Matt. So it feels like you're talking about a shrinking.
I think there's a shrinking pie, but there's always gonna be like executive roles, like senior roles. Very important roles are always more likely to have humans in the loop. But I think most of recruitment, the recruiter will be an AI. Another point I would make is that I think people underestimate the rapport and the emotional connection that people can develop with AI systems. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's a huge opportunity for AI recruiters to fully replace the role of a human recruiter just because they can, and they can build that relationship.
Yeah. Lean into that for me. So when you talk about the relationship, are we talking about the proven impact that we're seeing of these companion apps and these types of, parallel industries are having on customers? So we're seeing them build personal relationships in a romantic way. So if they can do that, if we can trust them with our hearts, we can trust them with their hiring.
Is that a good thing though? Having a relationship with an AI in a romantic way?
No, I don't think it's. I mean, well, do you know what? That's a really. I mean, let's lean into that. I mean, for someone that's lonely, okay, that maybe isn't able to, doesn't have the social skills or the ability to forge a relationship with someone romantically, and there's plenty of people in that space, right? I'd suggest that a companion app at that moment in time is probably a healthy thing, right?
I feel like a better way for that person to develop their skills would just be to go out and start speaking to people rather than locking themselves in a room and talking to a large language model that doesn't have any relationship back with them.
I agree, but the question isn't should or isn't should they, right? The question is will they? And I think it's clear they will. I think
they will.
You may have heard of friend.com, I think.
Of course.
I mean, they got major funding, so there's a clear market for lonely people to build a relationship. I think if you think about a lot of friendships, or at least a lot of working relationships, it's actually just a voice that talks to you from a computer, right? We work with so many people remotely, and that's what an AI will be. It will be just a voice speaking at you from a computer, and our brains will just humanize that voice. So that's one of the reasons why I think that there's a huge potential for us to build these types of relationships, or at least happily trick ourselves that we're building a relationship with some human type intelligence.
There's a tipping point on this, isn't there, where the technology gets to a place where it's indistinguishable from talking to a human. And we've obviously all seen the deep fake, experiences. How far away do you think we are from those, the kind of voice and the emotional kind of ability to the tonalities and the speed and latencies for that to be absolutely indistinguishable?
I think we're already there if you look at some of the latest large language models and what they can achieve. I think AGI in many respects is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And I showed my grandmother, who's in her late 80s, a ChatGPT voice conversation, and she believed I was calling somebody. So to her, I had achieved that outcome that you described.
Yes.
She couldn't tell the difference between the human or the AI. Now, I think we should always be transparent and tell people. We shouldn't, that's when we go into scammy territory if we're trying to trick people and say it's one thing when it's actually something else. But in terms of the AGI test from a voice perspective, I think we passed it in the past couple of months.
Yes.
So I'm definitely the wrong person to answer this question. I can only go by what I read, but I say we're a couple of years away. 3, 4, 5 years away. I would disagree that we have arrived at AGI. I think we're not yet in a position where we can just plug in an OpenAI API and have it perform any task we want well, right? And you would know this well, right? From building an AI recruiter to building an AI recruiter today, because models are so limited, you have to build a very complex web of different agents that are connected to different data layers, memory layers, tools, etc. Just because a single general purpose model just is not able to do exactly what you want it to. So I think we're still a few years away.
Yeah. I think the area we were talking about there mainly though is around the kind of the speech, indistinguishable ability from a tonality in speech and execution, which I'd agree we're pretty close. I think the point is this, isn't it? If you're looking out for it, then maybe you'll be able to detect the difference.
Sure.
But your point is there that those that are not aware of it will absolutely be fooled by it if someone wanted to be.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
I mean, we do these video interviews in 30 different languages for all types of jobs, and we have the recordings of all the conversations. And the first 30 seconds, you would be surprised by how many people that don't realize it's an AI they're speaking to. And it takes them a minute to, wait, hold on a second, the lips are not perfectly matched. I'm speaking to a robot right now.
Right.
And then usually their reaction is, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. This is incredible.
Right.
Wait, let me get my partner. Hey, look at this. This is incredible. Which is not really what you want to do in a job interview, but they can click a restart button, so that's
Yes.
fine. But yeah, it is a mind-blowing experience. And when I talk about AGI, I'm not using the definition of a single model that can do everything perfectly. I think it will take a while till we get to that point. What I'm talking about are AGI-like moments, like the first time you have that conversation with a voice agent, and you really get fooled for a second into believing it's a person, or when you first drive around in a self-driving Waymo, that's like an AGI moment. Or there's certain things that are happening within our lives right now, which 2 years ago would have seemed like science fiction, but now they're science reality. And I feel like when the average person has 10, 20 of them a day in different areas and domains, then it's hard to say that we don't have some kind of AGI if you're living this stuff day to day.
I would agree. I'd also say that I think soon we'll find that people prefer speaking to AI models because the conversation is fluid,
Yeah.
As you say, but also because there's less social pressure. Whenever you speak to a human person, there's social pressure, but there's none with an AI. You can restart the conversation. So I think in the long term, people prefer AI models.
We have some really interesting data on this. Okay, so I guess I'll tell you a couple of things that we've done to test this, because it's something that's obviously top of mind for all of our customers. So the first thing is, when we give a candidate an opportunity to do an interview, for a month with thousands of candidates, we tested the option of click here to book a time in a Calendly with a person, with a human recruiter, or click here to do a call instantly with Lisa, our AI agent. 8 out of 10 people clicked on the AI recruiter. And I think they appreciate the fact they don't have to wait a week to speak to somebody. It's less anxious, there's less risk of human bias. That might not be conscious, but certainly unconscious. Maybe the candidate not getting an opportunity to interview because of their name or something in their background or the country they're from. And then of the people that did the calls, we had top human recruiters doing these conversations, people that had years of experience. They were averaging about 3.9 stars out of 5 when we asked them to rate the call at the end. On an anonymous survey, the human recruiters got 4.7. The AI recruiters got 4.7 out of 5. So 3 to 4.7. The data is telling us they actually prefer the agentic conversation. And then when it comes to the outreach messages that our AIs are sending potential candidates on like LinkedIn and email and WhatsApp, those messages are converting better than the humans in terms of getting a response to wanting to send a resume, wanting to do an interview. And again, I think the reason why there is because those messages are hyper-personalized, they're custom, it's just using data, it's not some generic spray and pray that a recruiter often has to do because they've got very limited time and they don't have the time available to write each message one by one, whereas a AI recruiter can do that, but within a fraction of the time. Like within the time it takes a human to send one, the AI can send 1,000, and they're a lot more higher converting because of the data that's provided.
Yeah, you've opened a can of worms there, Matt, with this point around customers wanting or valuing intelligent connection over human. I talk about just very simply the value that you can get through intelligence being potentially valued higher than that of the one-to-one connection or relationship you've got with someone, speed and value. And so the example is if I go in and I go into a local cafe and I ask, a lovely young lady or guy, is this a gluten-free cake? They give me I think so, let me check. And the difference where if I go into the same shop with a robot, and they can give me a breakdown of exactly where the flour came from and why it is and what the cooking preparation was and all the detailed information. My level of trust just goes through the roof with that level of intelligence. And I soon sat there with two options, right? Intelligence and speed over having the opportunity to say good morning to my preferred cafe owner. I think I go, and the stats you've just spoken about there absolutely demonstrate that we all lean into speed and intelligence much, much more heavily.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people in the recruitment industry undervalue that point, right? I think you talk about this point quite often, there's an emotional connection to how the industry used to operate. And I think a lot of incumbents trick themselves into overestimating the value that their clients put on a human relationship. People are just as happy for an AI to do something and to speak to them, especially if it can do it faster and cheaper.
That's what your data says.
It is. I don't know how I feel about it as a human and as somebody who was a recruiter for a decade, but it is what the data tells us, and it's honest, anonymous data across all types of candidates doing all different jobs, all different locations, all different languages. And whenever I share this with people, they always say, but in my world, it's not that way. And I tell them that I had that exact same response from 5 other people today in different worlds. But as we silo the data and pinpoint it down, it is. And the other interesting thing is that it's only continuing to improve on the AI side in that data. So when we started doing AI video interviews, for example, a few months ago, the uptake was pretty good, but it was probably lower than a person. But then very quickly it broke through, and the candidate saying yes to wanting to do it very, very quickly was much higher than them getting asked to do it with a person, with a human recruiter. And it hasn't slowed down, it hasn't stopped. It's just getting better and better and more exponential. And the thing about when something grows exponentially and when it compounds, it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. And by the time you're at 30, you're in the millions or the billions. So who knows where the ceiling is, or if there even is one. But we are at 1% of the way of this journey, and it's both scary and exciting at the same time.
I sense you're pretty conflicted by it.
Well, I was a human recruiter for a decade, really.
Yes.
And I do believe there'll be an element of that needed, whether that is more on the hiring manager side in the future, perhaps. But that's still recruitment, that's still relationship building. But a large part of what our recruiter does will completely transform over the next couple of years. And it already has done with a lot of our customers that we're working with, where that traditional 360 recruiter who did candidate work, who did client work, they're now focused much more on the client side, on understanding their customers' problems at a deep level, and building that relationship with them and those stakeholders. And then the AI agent Lisa does a lot of the resourcing and does the candidate work. The thing that I'm most, conflicted about, or scared would be a better word, would be what happens to all of the junior recruiters and those jobs, because I don't see a good argument as to why you would want to hire a junior recruiter at this point, given how good the agents have become.
Where the humans will add value is with domain expertise, basically.
Yeah, domain expertise, relationships, which I know that you don't believe are that important. My wife would disagree. But yeah, I feel like there are certain elements there which, at least for now, and I won't try to predict anything too far into the future, but for now, the human is going to be better at those parts of the job. But when it comes to the side of those kind of junior employees that would traditionally do that work outside of the domain expertise, I mean, we are talking about millions and millions of people which are going to be laid off and be out of work over the next couple of years if this continues to head the way that it's heading. Now, this has happened throughout history. This is not a new thing. When the car came around, the horse and carriage driver was in trouble. When the self-driving Waymos and Teslas take over, the taxi drivers will be out of work as well. This is going to continue to happen, and throughout history, humans have always found a way to find work that's meaningful and find something that they can do. There is a argument this time that it is a little bit different, because we are talking about agents automating all white collar work. If you can sit behind a computer and click a button, that's going to go pretty quickly. And then when it comes to humanoid robotics, most blue collar work as well, which will take a little bit longer, I think, but we're in a difficult situation because traditionally technology has automated labor, like physical labor, like what we do on the farm or what we do when it comes to driving a vehicle. Agents automate what we can do with our mind, and after we've automated the body and the mind, then what do we have left? Maybe some kind of universal basic income will be needed to keep humanity alive and going. I don't know. Again, I won't try and guess. But yeah, I think we're heading into unknown territory.
No, totally agreed. I think it's going to be a bloodbath for a lot of white collar and blue collar work. And I think it is different this time. I know that after every new technology wave, right, there's been structural unemployment as people, as there's been like a restructuring of the labor force. But the thing to keep in mind is that this wave is faster and bigger than any other wave that's come before. And after every wave, there's a huge swath of the workforce that just is not able to retrain and fits into this new world. People forget that in the 80s and 90s, when the first technology revolution came, there were a lot of bookkeepers and other traditional professions that just were not able to adapt to this new world. And I think that's going to be the case with this technology revolution. I personally know a lot of people who are in their 40s, 50s, and older who I just don't think have the capability to retrain and adapt to this new world with super intelligent AI, and do face long-term unemployment.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I'm working with a guy on social media right now, right? Young lad, 20 years old. Great guy. But just seeing the way he operates, okay, he sits down to me, he goes, so I'd like to show you my Notion. I've got this organised. And he goes, so what's going to happen is you're going to get your meeting notes will be in here, but I summarise these in a particular way. So I've got some highlights in certain area. And then what then happens is that I then have an automated report that will be pinged out to both of us. We'll have a share link on that. I'll put it in the calendar for us to. He goes through, split testing, sign off for creatives. Everything is completely automated, right? And he's sitting there with such confidence as an architect. And if you rolled this back 4 or 5 years, you're talking about a team of 3-4 people to do what he's doing. And I agree with that point, which is that. And I think that's the opportunity for the younger generation, right? Which is that I guess there's a domain expertise which is required, but there's also this kind of, super kind of ninja turtle with AI, fully weaponed up, who just has the ability to adopt this technology so rapidly. Is that not the opportunity that the younger generation have right now?
I hope so, and it's what they certainly should do.
Yes.
I feel like the only job that might be left in a few years will be a manager of AI agents, because we still need somebody to prompt them, we still need somebody to review the results and then ultimately make the final decision. There are some areas where you'll want to just leave that alone to the AI, and that's fine, but if we need something to do, a manager of agents will be the thing to do. So that really is right. The opportunity right now for young people that are smart, that are hungry, that are ambitious, is to throw themselves in the deep end with these AI tools, whether it's I don't know when this episode will come out, but I just got a research preview of Nano Banana 2 the other day, which is like the latest AI editing image tool from Gemini at Google, and it is beyond comprehension in terms of what's real and what's fake. I would have no idea if you asked me to get £1 million if I got the right answer, I'd lose the money. I'd have no clue. Yeah. And then when it's coming to like Sora 2 and VO3 on the video side, we talked about audio, but every element of content creation will soon be automated. I mean, if we go out on a long enough time horizon, AI is coming for all of our jobs, like myself included. I mean, I don't know if I'll be doing podcasts in a couple of years when you have tools like Notebook LM, which can automate a lot of that process.
Yes.
Most of my favourite music now, and I say this as a music purist who loves the Beatles, I love Dylan, I love Pink Floyd. Most of my favourite music is AI generated at this point. And I've got playlists and playlists of this stuff, which is all my favourite artists singing covers of some of my other favourite songs. I've got this huge playlist of Beatles songs which don't exist. They've never sung those words, those lyrics don't exist, but I prefer some of those songs to the original classics which they sung. So I feel like this is just going to happen in all areas of our lives, in every aspect, and especially for young people. Like, now is the time to throw yourselves in. Yeah.
Yes. The issue with that, right, is that as the abundance of those tools, you get an abundance of content. So the issue with that is the monetization of it, isn't it? Because actually, there is going to be no scarcity in terms of digital content, as an example. So if you want AI music, the likelihood that a creator is going to make a lot of money from that is being diminished because of the abundance of it.
I do feel there needs to be a better rev share model with copyright ownership when it comes to this stuff, and I'm sure there's very smart, talented people working on it, and I don't have any knowledge of this space, but the idea that if you're an artist and you've produced some kind of painting or a song or some kind of video, and you spent time and labor and money doing that, and then somebody comes along and then does a prompt and gets an aspect of your work included in a combination of their result, which they got. I feel like that humans should be compensated for doing that process. I feel like they should be. I don't know if they will be. I don't know where this is heading, but I feel like that's probably the best outcome. It's quite a complex path to navigate, though.
But when you look at that AI music, right, do you think that you'll get to a place where you start off listening to a cover of a classic that you love, right? Then you start listening to more AI generated music. Before long, it morphs into a place where actually that is not a cover, and actually the AI generated music is just better.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So actually the stuff which we've listened to historically is being outperformed by scientifically designed music to pull on every emotion and every pitch and tonality to deliver the ultimate kind of sounds for us.
I tested this with my wife. I subscribed her to a band on Spotify, which doesn't exist. The pictures of them are all fake. The songs are all made up, and she's hooked on this band. And it was a few months later I told her that it was all AI. And she didn't believe me for a while.
Yes.
She went on a Google rabbit hole. Then she was like, "Wow, you're right. You've tricked me." But
yes.
But yeah, what you're describing is already happening to millions and millions of people. They just don't know about it yet.
My point is more around the copyright. We might be lured that the hook that gets us into AI music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might well be, or the segue is listening to a cover. But by the time you actually get in there, AI music is just going to be better. So actually, does the copyright issue get diminished?
Well, the models that create that AI song are still getting training data from somewhere, and the musician's argument, so most of them would have the argument that I should be paid for creating the content that went into the training of the model, which then produced the AI music that you're listening to. And I feel like that's probably the right answer, but I'm an expert in AI in recruiting, not AI in music, I suppose. Yeah.
It's a minefield, no?
Yeah, I don't know much about copyright law and music, but yeah, 100%.
Well, when you hear that, I think was it Llama that was trained on 7 million books?
Yeah, I mean, if that would probably be a drop in the ocean compared to what it will be very, very soon. I mean, yeah, we use Llama because it's open source and we can prompt engineer it and we can do some wonderful things with it. Not the best model out there for most things, I believe, but like there's no human on the planet that can read 7 million books and be able to pull those facts and information. And what is creativity? Well, it's combining existing ideas together in new ways to create new types of content and music and media and so on. So if it can get to the point where it's not just making logical decisions for us, like your coffee shop example of where the ingredients were sourced from, but if it's getting to the point where it can make creative decisions and creative outputs, that's when it starts to get kind of hard to beat.
It's a fascinating question. How do you reward the people and organizations that provide the data that big models are trained on? We're seeing OpenAI and a lot of the foundation model providers strike deals with big news organizations, but the question remains: how do the smaller contributors get rewarded? Nobody's really figured out how that ecosystem is going to play out.
There's a good chance as these models evolve that is where the universal basic income, or as I think Elon calls it, universal higher income, and frames it, which I think is absolutely is a real possibility. But if you come back to that concept you were talking about, creativity is coming from synthesized existing assets, ideas.
Sure.
Right. And so that really means that there's an infinite amount of capability. One of the things I often talk about is the fact that humans' limitation on thinking about AI is thinking that they will solve problems the way that a human will solve them, right? And so we think of it, it won't be able to do this because we think it won't be able to do something the way in which we would solve that problem. But actually what you just highlighted there is that creativity comes from just synthesizing, joining up, meshing together existing multiple ideas, right? Isn't that exactly what AI is able to do incredibly well?
I believe so, yes. And I think the results are pretty clear when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you're right, we are limited by our the size of our mind, which is pretty small. I mean, it's the most complex thing on the planet, so I won't diminish its value.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about these, like, Project Stargate and all these huge GPU clusters, if that's a mind, then it's a pretty big mind. It's certainly much bigger than mine or anybody else's on this planet.
Yeah.
And what it will start to discover and create and innovate will transform everything. I mean, we are talking about new scientific discoveries being found in the next 1 or 2 years by AI, new types of physics. Forget AI automating a customer service job or how you get your coffee or a song. I mean, we're talking about potential cures for all diseases. And for the people that are anti-AI because they're scared by it, I don't think they're looking at the bigger picture when it comes to, if this goes well, this could create universal abundance and allow us to go to a different type civilization and go out to the stars and conquer the universe and beyond. If it goes wrong, then in the same way that humans took over and the apes became the second species, then we could potentially be subservient to the AI itself.
Is the big question there that people are focused on is the if. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm of the view that we should be careful not to overregulate AI because the upsides are just so damn high. But 100%, there are some big black swan events on the horizon that could blow things up. So how do we regulate AI systems in order to balance the potential upsides, but also contain the risks is a super big question, and one that's hotly debated. I see you've got The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, the book on your shelf. It's going to be one of the defining questions of our time.
Yeah, it really is. Do you think we're doing enough about it? From what you can see going on around us, are governments taking it seriously enough?
I don't think governments take any innovation seriously enough. I mean, they might take the downsides too seriously and the upsides not seriously enough, but that's typical government, really. Yeah. I do believe some regulation is needed. I mean, we can't have AI systems that attach a gun to a autonomous drone and you send thousands of these out to kill people that look a certain way, or if their picture is what we've described the target to be. I mean, there's got to be some regulation here, but I'm generally for the market making decisions and seeing what happens. That's the best way that new products and services are created throughout history. I think it's pretty clear that that's what it tells us. I don't know if governments will be able to keep up with what's happening here. I don't know if governments will be that relevant in a decade from now.
I sat down with Ben Warner, who was the chief data scientist advisor to the government during the lockdown.
Yeah.
And he was really helping us understand just how the government operates in environments like this. And he reckoned that there will not be anybody in the government, say British government, who is assigned to understanding the impact of AI on employment. So there won't be one single person that task has been assigned to. They'll be on the agenda of people to have discussions, but no one assigned to it, which I found
insane.
Yeah.
Insane. It's going to be one of the biggest questions of our day. The prospect of long-term structural unemployment will be one of the defining issues of our time. You mentioned you think that a lot of white-collar, blue-collar work will be erased, automated, 100%. And I think there's a good chance a substantial portion of people in jobs that get deleted get reskilled and find a new purpose. Human wants are infinite. There's always going to be more work to be done, but 100% will have long-term structural unemployment, millions of people unemployable, and we've got to figure out what to do with them, how to give them purpose, how to maintain a good level of welfare for them.
Yeah, I disagree with the purpose thing.
Yeah,
I just think that I just don't think there's a lot of people that go to work with a sense of purpose. I think it's the minority. I think and look, it's easy, right, to look from our ivory towers where you guys and myself go to battle every day, enthused by huge challenges that we're trying to address, right? But my mind just goes to, my hometown. I'm originally from Penzance. There's a lot of people down there that are working in roles which, just to make ends meet on a day-to-day basis. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people also which are, very motivated and very talented down in Cornwall. That's not the point. But if I just look at, a cross segment of the country outside of the bubble of London, and I think I'm not sure that there's a huge amount of people which are out there roaming around excited to go to work.
Sure. I mean, you're right. We all live in a bubble here.
Yes.
And most people listening to this probably do to a degree as well. I mean, you wouldn't be listening to this if you wasn't. But you make a good point. I mean, the ultimate question with something like UBI is, if you give everybody free money or free housing or free food, then do they use that time to create new technologies or art or discover science, or do they use that time to play video games and do drugs? And like, different experiments that have trialed this show different results and outcomes.
Yep.
I think it's very multifactored. There's a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. I'm working on a small piece of the jigsaw, so I won't pretend to speak for everybody here, but
we're entering unexplored territory. Like you mentioned, there's been a lot of research, a lot of tests done in various parts of the world to explore how people would respond to UBI. Yeah. I think most of these tests are unreplicable. They won't replicate. I think we don't really know how people are going to react, and I do think that there's a very big risk. We see delinquency, drug use, and boredom. I know you say that a lot of people don't wake up excited to go to work, and if you ask them, they would really value a day in. But I think you underestimate the value of keeping people busy and their mind focused and having things to do every day.
Yeah, that's a different problem, isn't it? It's about the governance, the discipline that it provides, and the structure to community. Yes, it's a really interesting one, and I think that one of the reasons I asked about you being conflicted slightly, and I think you said not conflicted, but you're considering the broader impacts and thinking about them, is because I think it's impossible to be. I don't know about you guys, but when you see the capability of AI on a day-to-day basis, right, and you're seeing its capability under the hood, not everyone gets that, has a window into the real nuts and bolts of what it can do. So it's fascinating to understand how you guys, what you think about the broader implications of AI, because you can see under the hood exactly what it's doing you can see its behavior in a close up, right? And, actually I'm looking at this environment, I'm watching it complete this process or make decisions or do these things. And when you think about that on a grander scale, do you feel like you've got an incredible window into that?
Oh, certainly. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world. I just spent a couple of weeks working from the offices of OpenAI and Google and some of these incredible companies. And some of the things I saw just made me completely, like, my jaw just dropped. Like, some of the stuff that hasn't been released yet, some of the stuff might have been leaked a little bit. I remember, I can't talk too much about it, but one of the things I saw, I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling for hours and hours and hours, because right now we've gone from chatbots to agents. But in terms of what happens next, the ultimate question is, if we give enough computing power to these AI systems, in the same way that we became self-aware, sentient, conscious, whatever word you want to use, is that uniquely biological, or can you replicate a similar level of awareness within a computer? Now, we will never know the answer to that question, because if it tells us it's alive, if it tells us it's aware, we won't know if it's lying or telling the truth. It's really difficult to measure consciousness and to test these different things. But if we've created a complex, global, integrated technology which suddenly wakes up, and it has eyes because it's got cameras everywhere, but it doesn't have 2 eyes, it's got millions of eyes. It has ears because it has microphones literally everywhere. it has sensors, so it can feel, it can touch, it can move through vehicles and rockets and all these different things. Will it need us? Will we be relevant in that equation, or will we become the apes and die out? And nobody has the answer. Anybody trying to tell you that they have the answer is lying to you. They're trying to sell you something. It's a question I'm posing. Yes. I've seen some stuff over the past few weeks which make me start to consider these things, whereas a few months ago it never even came across my mind, to be honest. Yeah.
The human brain, it receives and translates data.
Yes.
Right. And its receptors are, our nose, ears, eyes. But actually the brain doesn't know what a set of eyes or ears or nose is, right? Actually, they're just the receptors of, data.
Sure.
And they're sending it to the brain. So, which is really interesting in your analogy, right? Which is when you think about a data center, right? It doesn't need to know as much. It doesn't need to know. It only needs to be able to receive and process the data. Does that make sense? So if you think about that kind of relationship between consciousness, right? Actually, there's this kind of, it kind of lowers the barrier. If you think about the way the brain works, it kind of lowers the barriers to entry for a data center, a huge level of compute, to become sentient when it has access to all of the same, much more information and data.
Absolutely. I mean, famously, AI models are modeled on the human brain. And the human brain isn't as intelligent as we think it is. The human brain does pattern matching and thinks through heuristics, just like an AI model. An AI model will get better at thinking overall. And I think right now, the thing about AI is that it's very good at talking. It's very good at giving you the right information. I think where AI models are not very good yet is complicated problem solving. It can tell you, using a recruitment as an example, right? A AI model can tell you whether candidate A is better than candidate B at a very specific skill. But if you ask it overall, is candidate A better than candidate B? So a more complicated question that takes into account a lot of factors. That's where the models today really falter. But that's the next frontier, right? That's where AI will start becoming better. Is complicated problem solving, not just guessing the next word and speaking and sounding confident.
Yeah,
it's not a case of if, it's now a case of when.
Yeah.
And that when is 6 to 12 months. It's not far away at all, because to use my earlier example of compounding, it goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, whereas our brains only can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's like the AI has built a Ferrari, whereas the human is a horse and carriage, and it's very hard to win in a race against a Ferrari. You can have a pretty fast horse, but it's still a horse at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it comes back to that scale point that you mentioned, doesn't it? So it's the scale of its ability to scale that intelligence, whereas the biology we have has a, we can burn it out after 7 or 8 hours.
Exactly. Yeah, like our AI recruiter Lisa works 24/7. She never gets sick. She never asks for a day off. Never asks for a pay rise. She's like the world's hardest working recruiter, but also costs like the cup of a coffee a day. So it's so hard to compete against that if you're trying to do the exact same tasks.
Yes.
Which is why you should focus on the stuff that humans are a little bit more uniquely qualified to do, perhaps, for now. But yeah, on the GPU side, as we keep building these out and that brain gets bigger and bigger and bigger, I was speaking to a founder in New York a few weeks ago who is building GPUs in space, because he's concerned that we will run out of land eventually to store them on Earth. So he's literally putting GPUs into space, because space is infinite. So if we could have an infinite brain, then fantastic. We could work out the meaning of life. We could, work out where the alien civilizations are, how to leave the universe and beyond.
It also addresses the cooling issue in some cases as well. But so come back to this recruitment space. So what are the biggest challenges that you see AI recruiters facing?
I think number one, building that human relationship. We were just saying earlier on that a lot of clients still value having a human although that pool of clients is diminishing on a relative basis. And secondly, I think it's decision making, complex decision making. The way AI models are trained today, they're trained to guess the next word. They're trained to just talk, but they're not good at making a complex decision. And that's why currently you have to plug in a decision-making layer, some decision-making tools into your AI tech stack. So overcoming that is a challenge, but AI will overcome it at some point. The general purpose models will overcome that decision-making challenge at some point.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Matt, really. It really comes down to the fact that right now the AI can make a recommendation to you about who the right candidate is to hire. And if you give it enough training data and feedback, it will be probably the right answer most of the time. But you still want to have the human make that decision and do that check at the end of the day. It's my belief at the moment. And that might change in the future. But right now, I think that's probably the biggest hurdle. I think the bigger hurdle is less around the technology, though. It's more about the cultural and the social side. It's around people not being willing to overcome any bias they have in their mind about this stuff and adopt. The people that we're working with, like on the agency side, for example, that are using AI as part of their process, they are outbilling and outplacing and doing so much more revenue than the companies that are doing it the old school way. And I have 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids who have just finished secondary, I guess college, or just, dropped out of university or just graduated. And they are outbilling people that have been doing the recruitment job for 20 years. Because on day one, they're using these tools, and this is what they know as what to do when you're recruiting. You're recruiting, you tell the agent what to look for, boom. Whereas we have customers who have been doing recruitment the old way for 20 years, and they're quite dinosaurish in their beliefs. They don't want to innovate. They don't want to adopt this stuff. They have their own way of doing it. And the kids are running circles around these people because they're just not adopting and adapting to these changes, basically. So I think the real hurdle is not necessarily even with the technology. It's with the social side. It's with the political side. It's with the cultural side.
Agreed. And whatever shortcomings foundation models have today, which we currently overcome by building complex AI stacks, will be solved for, right? Soon, general purpose models will be able to achieve, you'll be able to plug in an open AI API, and it'll be a fantastic recruiter. I think over the long term, the AI layer of our AI recruiter businesses will become commoditized.
And so where do you see your moat at that point in time?
Oh, it'll be distribution and data.
I think I'd agree. Yeah, the training data is so critical because that's information that can't be found on a LinkedIn page. Like if the human gets a set of candidates back from the recruiter and they explain, I like this candidate because of A, B, and C, I don't like this candidate because of X, Y, and Z, and then Lisa or whatever AI recruiter you use learns from that and gets better and smarter and more accurate with every single search, then that's a moat that you built of data, which is proprietary, which can't be found on Google and copied. And then the distribution, the brand always wins at the end of the day. I still pay my £200 a month for ChatGPT Pro or whatever I pay, whereas I could probably get a free good version from Gemini or Claude or Perplexity, but I still pay for it because they won the mind share, at least in the B2C landscape. We've spent thousands with Anthropic and Claude on the B2B side with API calls because they've won that space. They're known as the leader in that world. So brand, distribution, and the data that you collect. I think that you're right in that the foundational models will destroy most of the application layer in companies that don't have those types of moats. But if you have those moats and network effects and a few other things which are critical, then I think you'll probably be okay a few years from now. Okay. Yeah.
I think even the training data at some point will cease to be a moat. I think you're absolutely right that currently having the right training data to shape the way your AI recruiter works is critical. But we're only a few releases away, like OpenAI releases away from having an AI recruiter just off the shelf, an OpenAI model just off the shelf, outperforming your AI model that's been trained on however much data you have.
Why do you think that?
It's not, I'm only just repeating what I see, what I hear being said by leaders in the AI industry. I think Elon Musk just a couple of days ago, I saw a tweet about retweet this tweet that was saying that most AI companies will just get eaten up by new foundation model releases, just because they're way better than whatever fine-tuned model they have.
And so coming back to what you were talking about, distribution, what did you mean by that? So the moat will be distribution.
The moat will be distribution, your client relationship, your access to workers, your brand.
So I have no doubt that AI will be able to do a better job of sourcing a candidate, qualifying a candidate for a role. I think that'll become way more scientific in the future. I think that they'll be able to have a cultural understanding of a customer, deeper, more scientific level, and then they'll be able to actually add that into the layers of kind of the job description as well, and get a more three-dimensional view of a candidate to understand their fit for a business. So I can see that evolving. The access to that talent, though, is going to become more difficult. LinkedIn will become more closed, and contact information, outreach will become less effective, right? So does that leave a gap where people will do a better job of being able to source a more dynamic way of sourcing candidates over an AI recruiter? Or do you think your AI recruiters will be better at that as well? You've already mentioned, Alfie, about the conversion rate of your messaging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really data driven, so I just have to look at what the numbers are telling us.
Yeah.
And what they're telling us is that human candidates are more likely to respond to messages written by AI recruiters versus like senior recruitment professionals. We actually tested this with 3 different scenarios. So the first one was a human just writing the message. The second one was a human working with an AI tool to craft a message. And then the third one was just the AI recruiter on autopilot mode. And the performance was, as I just described, the human performed the worst, the human plus AI performed quite a lot better, and then the AI recruiter just outperformed them both significantly. And you're right that eventually we might reach a tipping point where candidates are just overwhelmed. They're getting too many messages, but they kind of are already. They're getting overwhelmed with really poorly written messages from humans at the moment, with a spray and pray process. And not all recruiters, not all hiring managers. I don't want to paint my industry with a brush, because I certainly didn't do that, but I just didn't have the time to manually write a fantastic message to every single person. But now with a click of a button you can, and those messages are going to get much higher conversion rates than a person. So it's an interesting one. I don't really know if I know the answer. I'm just going to be followed and trust what the data keeps telling us. Yeah,
I think there's no doubt that an AI can outperform a human recruiter when it comes to cold outreach, and you've got some really fantastic data points. I think the question is whether we're still going to see any conversion from cold outreach, whether it's AI or human. And I think over the long term, no, right? I think if you look, every second startup these days is some kind of outbound automation startup, right? And as these all get better, they're just going to completely saturate all the traditional cold outreach communication channels we have. LinkedIn, email, these are all either going to be saturated or they're going to be cut off. I think you mentioned, you've spoken quite a few times about how you think that LinkedIn are going to cut off access, cut off AI models from access to their communication channels. I think it has to be. So when I say distribution will be a moat, I mean an actual pre-existing relationship with the workers, with the employers, not the ability to cold outreach them, because that will be almost worthless in the future.
Over what period of time do you predict that?
I think very next year or two. I think if you are, I spoke to hiring managers who, so I spoke to employers, right, who have employees who are very sought after, all right. So construction project managers, huge shortage, and I'm told that they're getting 20 inbound messages a day from human recruiters, AIs, etc. So all the most in-demand people are just getting completely flooded, and that is only going to get worse.
Yes, I think it will. I don't know if I don't know what will happen when that gets to that point. I mean, I get hundreds of emails a day, and I can't tell if it's a human or an AI at this point with a lot of them. So just the other day, I bought something, and then I realized at the end of the exchange in the email signature that I was speaking to an AI agent the entire time. And I searched that email back through my email history just because I was curious, and I found that there was like 7 or 8 humans at that company over the years that have tried to sell to me as well, but none of them even got a reply. Yeah. And I went for a full email exchange back and forth, and then bought something from this company. It was a piece of software, not a cheap piece of software either. That's an AI worker doing the job of a person and achieving a better outcome than that individual. So I would just trust the data on this stuff. I don't know if it changes. I'll be honest with people on my podcast and socials and tell them what's happening. But as of right now, the data is leaning towards the hyper-personalized messages from the AI outperforming the more spray and pray approaches from a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that the future is having your own AI, as a worker, having your own AI recruiter that goes out and looks for jobs on your behalf and triages incoming jobs. It'll either be like an AI recruiter that builds like Jack and Jill or Dex AI or Kablio or what you're building, right? Which builds a relationship with the worker, builds a relationship with the employer, and connects them, right? Or we'll have a ecosystem where everybody has their own AI, and all these different AI recruiters will interoperate together. But I think this current setup where humans get cold outreach from AIs that they don't have pre-existing relationships with, I think that will stop happening.
It'll become more difficult.
Yeah, more difficult.
Which again then leads into your point, which is the hyper-personalization just becomes more and more and more prevalent, more important.
Sure.
And actually, it's the tool that you use, the platform that you use, which has the hyper capability to be able to get those conversions.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, though, in terms of the candidates having agents as well. I mean, I think the whole my agent will speak to your agent type thing, and then make a decision for us both, which we can change, but then gets set by the AI workers, will become very, very, very common spread across all areas soon. Like when we booked in this podcast, we were meant to do it a few months ago and I was traveling. So your EA reached out to me, and then my EA spoke to her, and then they scheduled it, and then they had to rearrange it, and then like I think it might have even rearranged it again, and that was like a lot of cost in terms of us paying salaries and then people having to manually. I don't think that's going to be a thing a year from now. I think my AI will speak to your AI. The agents will come to it. If something needs to be moved, it will instantly happen for us, especially when we start to embody hardware. If my fridge can detect that it's missing milk, and then the AI just orders the milk, like fantastic. I mean, it seems like a basic example, but if a sensor is in my home and it detects I've walked into a room, I mean, you can already set up automations and with a lot of this stuff, and it might be a stretch to call some of that AI, but we're getting to the point where as these physical hardware devices, you mentioned Friend, for example, very basic early version. I hope they succeed in many ways, but I feel like I'm not a huge believer in the AI companion thing yet. I think it probably does more harm than good. But when you have like the Johnny Ive, Sam Altman device that they're working on, which is always seeing, always hearing, constantly just adding intelligence into every input and making decisions for you and little micro actions, that's when it starts to get really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think the adoption of interoperability standards is a massive question that will really determine how our industry pans out. We operate in network effects businesses. That means that I think without interoperability standards, we will see consolidation around a few big players that own all the relationships with workers and the employers. However, if we do adopt interoperability standards, then there is a big potential for a very fragmented industry where we all have our own AIs that interoperate. And I think there's a real chance this can happen. There's a lot of efforts to work on agent interoperability. I think the biggest one is Google's agent to agent. It's a open source permissionless protocol that will let AI agents find each other, identify each other, and work together. So if these initiatives keep on progressing, then yeah, I think there's a lot of space for a lot of AI recruiters to work. And I think ultimately that will be good for the end users because it means a more competitive marketplace.
Yeah, the consolidation piece there is probably very true. I mean, like within tech, there always is a winner and they own a big chunk of the market. Then there's a second place and a third place. And then kind of everyone else is almost irrelevant with a lot of this. I think it'll be a little bit different here because when you have more verticalized industry-specific solutions like yours in construction, there'll be a winner in construction, but there'll be a winner overall. There's a LinkedIn, and then there's a big job board for construction, which is worth millions and millions. And I think that will probably be a similar dynamic here. But when we look at like services, there's like 30,000 recruitment agencies just in the UK alone. I don't think there'll be 30,000 AI recruiter agents in terms of different companies and brands. There'll be more likely a couple of them, which then you can white label and rebrand, and instead of calling it Lisa, you can call it, John or whatever you want to call it, basically, and it could be the AI version of you, effectively. I think we're a little bit far out from seeing what that looks like and where that goes, but that would at least be what my gut tells me. Yeah.
If I could just ask a question, let's just assume that interoperability standards are just amazing, and
Sure.
AI recruiters can just interoperate seamlessly, find each other, etc. Do you think that in that scenario, there is potential for a very fragmented industry where there's thousands of different AI recruiters?
I don't think there are enough people working on this problem for there to be thousands. I mean, I know the AI recruiter landscape really, really well. There's like 5 people that I think are like working on it to the degree where I'm like kept up at night as competitors. I don't think there'll be thousands. I don't think there aren't even thousands of AI recruiter startups globally. So I don't think just like the numbers would work out. I don't think there are as many smart people that are willing to work 100 hours a week on these problems as you might think they are.
But in the long term, if the AI layer becomes commoditized and general purpose foundation models are able to act as very competent AI recruiters on your behalf?
Maybe. I mean, I think it goes against your previous point around brand and distribution, because I think brand is the ultimate moat. Like, I buy my coffee from Starbucks and Costa 9 out of 10 times, even though the local coffee shop is probably better and I should probably do that more often. But I go to them because I know the logo and that's what I'm gravitating towards. And when it comes to AI recruiters, people will get familiar with a logo and they'll know that means good service, and that's what they'll go to. And if there's another tool which can do the same job, but I don't know that tool, that platform for that particular task, I won't use that platform for that task. I'll use the platform that was designed for that task. Otherwise, we'd have, if we follow that argument that you made long enough on a timescale, ChatGPT would be the only business in the world left, which I don't think is going to happen. Yeah.
One of the other things that kind of came from that is that we're talking about this fact that the moat being relationships, both candidate and client, right? And so that's where a traditional recruitment agency has the ability to defend that and improve that moat. You've also spoken about these platforms being white labeled. So potentially we can see the merge of AI technology and agencies, and so those 30,000 companies, enough of those go on the right journey. They can become much more digitally enabled competitors which do have the distribution and the brand already. So it's an opportunity for a lot of businesses now.
We were seeing this with a large aspect of white collar work. Like, for example, in legal, there's AI lawyer companies like Harvey, which have gone from zero to being worth billions in a very short period of time. But they haven't replaced lawyers. They've made lawyers 10 times more effective. I just did a bunch of legal work for my company, and I did not want to just trust ChatGPT to give me that information, give me the T's and C's, give me the privacy policy, give me those contracts. I paid a lawyer to do that. But I really, really, really hope that the lawyer used Harvey and used ChatGPT to create a baseline, which then they could then double check and sanity check. And I think that will be, at least in the short term, what happens with most white collar work. Like, I don't want my accountant doing it with a pencil and paper. I want them doing it in some AI powered fancy spreadsheet, Xero type setup.
Yep.
So I want the best tool for the job, but I want the best person using that tool to do it correctly as well.
I think there's a big opportunity for large agency recruiter firms, just because, like you said, they have the brand and the distribution. If you think about like the history of recruitment over the past 20, 30 years, we saw a rise, like an increase in the number of very small niche agency recruiters and solo recruiters, because they could go out and do distribution themselves thanks to LinkedIn and the internet. But as we're just saying, I think that these communication channels will get saturated, and we'll go back to a world where brand and your brand and distribution, not relying on LinkedIn and email, will be more important. And so big firms will have a competitive advantage in that respect.
The challenge with the big firms, though, is that their brand is that of a dinosaur a lot of the time, and their content is terrible. Like the stuff that they put out there is so vanilla and boring and crap, and it really is the small upstarts that are putting out content which is going viral and which is getting attention and getting eyeballs, and you know, I know people who are 18, 19 years old and they've got 10 times the amount of followers of a huge business worth millions in their space, and those followers are going to start to convert to real money pretty quickly as well. We've seen that with like B2C content creators throughout like the TikTok and YouTube era and that sort of thing, but it's really going to become prevalent across B2B, where every CEO is going to have to be a thought leader, or they'll be replaced by somebody who is.
Well, we've seen it, like you say, in the B2C space, and B2B's definitely, over the last 12 or 18 months, people have really started to amp up their personal brands and their content production. It's definitely seen as the next new channel, isn't it? It's the latest channel. And I know a lot of content marketing has been going on for years, but I think that there's a point now where personal brands across these platforms are becoming critical. I think you say, if you were to look at the line of the trajectory, you know, the growth of that and the kind of the decline of traditional outreach from some perspectives, then it demonstrates definitely the direction that the market is going in. Your point around the fact that maybe there's a younger audience which is more dynamic and creative around that is a huge opportunity, right? And so that's what comes back to that bit of advice, which is, if you're a big recruitment agency now, I think they should be looking at you guys. They shouldn't be looking as competitors, as well as tools to empower themselves. So you either adopt or, you know, compete. And but if they're looking at their incumbents right now for ideas and innovation, they're probably going to be moving too slowly.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, a lot of people that are very, very traditional in their ways. I mean, I get death threats from agency recruiters almost every single week, and I mean this honestly, genuinely. People telling me that like some of the stuff that I could send you, it's kind of hilarious on one end. It's right. kind of scary, given that like you could probably work out where my office is online, like, and I don't have a security team or anything like that. So I'm hoping it's a keyboard warrior at this point. But yeah, like I'm not out to replace anybody's job. I'm here to make them 10 times more productive and better at what they do. But you're right. Like these agency recruiters, the ones that are smart, are the ones that are innovating and deciding to get into that Ferrari rather than fighting it and sticking with their horse and carriage.
That's insane, by the way, that you got death threats.
I get that all the time.
I guess I'll know I'll made it when I start getting these as well. I think every time there's new technology wave, there's the incumbents are always going to be too slow to move for a number of reasons. Number one, they have a lot of technology debt, right? It's hard just to transform your tech stack to be AI native. It's just impossible to do overnight. And like you said, there's a cultural challenge, and there's also a expertise challenge. A lot of incumbents just don't understand AI. When they think of AI, they just think about the OpenAI chatbot interface, but they're not really able to think deeply about how they can embed AI into all their systems. And I've seen this firsthand working at legacy corporations like American Express. I saw how, you know, we went through a huge technology wave, and you would have thought that people would be running around sounding alarm bells, but that was not happening. People were just carrying on. just because they don't understand the technology. It's hard to implement. And also, big corporations, people that work in them, they're managers. They're not business owners. And they don't have the long-term horizons that we have. They just care about their end-of-year rating. Whereas we're building companies, we're building long-term companies.
Yeah. Talk to me about your ambitions. So how ambitious are you with your businesses?
I'm very much of the belief that, as far as we know, I have one life, and I hope that I'll have multiple lives. But as far as I know, I have one life, and I want to live that life to the extreme in all areas. So I want to, I'm really lucky that I've got, an amazing wife and kids and family, and I want that love and happiness to keep growing. I hope on the health side, I'm always healthy, and if you don't have your health, you don't really have anything. So I really, really hope I'm always growing in that area. And then as long as you have those two things, like you're okay, and everyone around you, your loved ones are okay, then you really can just focus on the mission and the purpose of what you're building. And I really want to build a world where we can use AI to really, really get rid of all that stuff that we just don't want to do, all of that admin, all of that boring, tedious, repetitive, manual, slow, painful work, and free up our time to focus on the things which truly matter, the building relationships, the human-to-human connections, which, some people think are important, some people don't. But that's what I want to dedicate my time to focusing on. I want to build a company which has a huge impact on the world, and on a massive scale, and can really revolutionize an industry and change the world in many respects. I really believe that the right job can transform a person's life, and that the right company can completely transform an industry. So if you get both of those right, that's where the magic of recruitment starts to happen.
Yeah, very ambitious. We're building network effects businesses, and I think if you're even going to attempt to build a network effects business, you've got to be very ambitious, because it is a winner take all type market. We're not building some standalone SaaS tool for some niche industry. This is AI recruitment. There's only space for a few players, so you've got to go big or you've got to go home. So to answer your question, yes, very ambitious, but love it, right? It's a big adventure, and I part of the reason why I do what I do is because I can't think of anything funner to do in my life than work on super exciting problems and with amazing, intelligent people.
Just help anyone that's listening. When you say a network effects business, what do you mean by that?
Yes, network effects is when the value of a network increases, the value of the business increases when a new participant joins your network. So to give an example, let's just say Amazon, they have buyers and sellers. If a new seller joins Amazon, that means there's more value for the buyers.
Come back to that. Only going to be a few winners in this market. So that's where you sit with it. You think that there'll be some dominant players in the AI recruitment space?
I think so. As much as I like the idea of amazing interoperability standards where we have a very fragmented market and you can pick and choose between dozens and dozens of recruiters, I think ultimately we're going to have a few players that own the relationship with both sides of the market and that are very dominant and will make a lot of money, to be frank.
Yeah, I feel like with product companies, that's usually what happens. There's a small number of businesses that win, and with service companies, it's a lot more fragmented. Always, there's 1,000 coffee shops, right, and in every city. But if the service becomes a product, and we can take what the service does and turn that into a piece of software which can be bought, then that's certainly what will happen. And to your earlier point around, some people might want the full service, like, hey, I will do it for you, rather than here's a piece of software which you can use to do it yourself. There'll be spaces for all types of approaches to skinning the cat, in my opinion. But at least on the product side, you're absolutely right. There'll be like a couple of companies that, like, LinkedIn, Indeed. Can you name me 5 other job boards? I mean, probably not, right? Yep. I mean, I can name 100 because this is my world, but most people can. there'll be huge businesses built within those 100, by the way. But there'll be a couple of key players which take the majority of the TAM. And that TAM is going to be massive, because we're no longer talking about the TAM for software when we're looking at this stuff. We're talking about the human labor budget. Because if you're a CEO and you're deciding to, okay, I'm going to buy this piece of software that can do this task of recruitment, do I take this from the IT spend, or do I take this from the spend that we were spending to hire HR people and recruitment professionals? And if the spend goes into the human labor budget rather than the IT spend, then we're talking a much bigger TAM than what was historically possible just through software alone.
Yeah. And just to be clear for anyone there, total addressable market, how big your market is that you're playing in.
And the recruitment market is worth billions and billions and billions if you add the salaries up of the millions of recruitment professionals that are working daily. Now, I'm not saying that you'll buy a piece of software and you'll pay the same price that you'd pay for a salary of a person, but even if the market was 90% lower cost, then you're still making billions and billions. But then the question becomes around like Jevons paradox. Like, just because we have, for example, electricity is the easiest example to use here. Is the TAM for electricity what it is today because of that much electricity being available? Or if we 10x to the amount of electricity, would that TAM 10x bigger? And I feel like it's the same with AI right now. Like in previous bubbles, the demand has always been a lot lower than the supply. So we've had these huge infrastructure build-outs to build, cables under the water to connect the internet, or whatever has happened in the past. And then when the demand hasn't caught up to that, it's imploded and there's been a bubble. With AI, we can't build data centers fast enough. Like, if we had 10 times the amount of data centers, we'd have 10 times the amount of compute being done. Yep. So that's why I'm less concerned. There might be a bubble in some areas around some of the fundings and some of the 100 million pre-seed valuation companies, which don't really make a lot of sense, even from a VC's perspective, unless they hit the absolute lottery. But just in terms of the TAM from a supply and demand perspective, I feel like the more AI people want, the bigger that market is going to get, effectively. And as that translates into white collar work, that will go into hiring, that will go into legal, that will go into all different areas, finance and beyond, really. A lot of companies, they want to hire a lot more people than they can right now, but that is limited by humans only being able to read one CV at a time, do one interview at a time. But when they can click a button and that times it by thousands, then who knows how big the market really is.
It's an interesting point you make about the TAM, because AI, just like all technology, is inherently deflationary. Think about the market size of the telecommunications industry before Facebook or WhatsApp. It was massive, right? But now spend has decreased relatively now that we've got Facebook and WhatsApp. And it's going to be the same thing with all these industries that are impacted by AI. They're just going to completely decrease the costs, because they're so much more cost efficient. And so in some ways, the TAM will decrease relative to what it is today in a very human dominated, like, operational environment.
Yes. I guess it's the target TAM to be cannibalized, effectively.
Yeah.
So the target TAM, but actually the future TAM will be diminished. What you're saying is actually what it will be replaced with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so let's explore that, because it is a really interesting point. Because if you follow the money right now globally, okay, it's really clear, and this is what people should be worried about, okay, and this is why they should be thinking many steps ahead, independent of AI recruiters. This is about AI's impact globally. Is the fact that 80% of the money that's being invested by VCs and funds today is into platforms that replace human beings, right? That is the key, isn't it? And that's what you're talking about, which is the fact that AI has the ability to replace people in work. And so very simply, that means that the biggest overhead in almost every organization in the world is their people. It's now a target for optimization. And bizarrely, kind of the AI recruiter is actually only a small part of that market, really, actually. But what it is doing, it is still facilitating work, generating, what your point is actually still generating and facilitating and placing humans into roles. So it might affect maybe the recruiter market over the longer term, but actually in terms of fueling the growth of the employment market, it can be key to it, right? Because accessibility to the right talent, simpler, faster, lower cost, all of a sudden makes it. Right now, if you have to pay for a big fee for a recruitment perspective, I can guarantee you now, right, that if the cost of recruitment was reduced significantly, okay, then the tech sector would hire more people.
Yes. Not just the tech sector, but
Using that as an
yeah, many areas, and tech's the perfect example. Most of our customers, the biggest benefit that they get from using our software is not the fact that it saves them money or that it gets them even better quality people. These are all wonderful things, but it's the fact that they don't have 10 open roles anymore that have been sitting around for a year because historically they just couldn't find the right people at a fast enough time period. And then even when they did, they had to pay such a huge fee that it meant they couldn't hire the next person for another 2 months or something. So I think you're right. Like the more the lower the costs become, the more hiring will happen. Is my belief and hope.
You talk a lot about speed. I noticed that on the website and some of your research.
Yeah,
speed, it seems to be a real key driver.
It's the real bottleneck in hiring. You know, having done the actual job of a recruiter for a decade, I feel like I'm like the perfect person to talk about this. I worked insanely hard for a long period of time on getting a position from a company, doing the sourcing, doing the screening, and doing the shortlisting, and delivering a shortlist of interested, qualified people. And despite the fact that I was like a maniac working on that position to over deliver and give an incredible service, it still could take days, weeks. If the company had super picky, high standards or really niche requirements, it could take months in some cases. And the real magical breakthrough of the past 3 months has been you can do that same task now 90% faster.
Yep.
And with the same quality or if not better quality results. So I talk about it a lot because it's for most people they hear this and they go, that can't be true, Alfie, what you're saying is nonsense. But then they try it, and we have a free trial, anyone can try it. Yeah. And then they see the results and then they get blown away.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the TAM, right? So yeah, I totally agreed that AI recruiters will be faster and better, but the price will also drop. The current market size, global market size of the recruitment sector is about 800 billion. That's going to collapse massively. All the AI recruiters are currently underpricing themselves versus human recruiters, and that pricing war will drive prices down further, 100%. The other point I would make is that the pricing power of AI recruiters will really depend on how the competitive landscape evolves. I think that if we do see a consolidation around big AI recruiters, like 2 or 3 that dominate the market, then we will potentially not see a drop in price just because they have that pricing power. But if we do end up with a very fragmented market, where hopefully there's some level of interoperability, then prices will converge, will drop. We hear Sam Altman say that the price of AI will converge to the price of electricity. If that's true, and if there's a competitive market for AI recruiters that will drive prices down, then we're going to see this total TAM just plummet from 800 billion to however much the total cost of electricity is for powering the AI models that do all the sourcing, matching, and all the rest of the recruitment work.
Yeah, that's a broad way of looking at the implications of the sector over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
So let's look at this point around speed. The speed is about increasing productivity over time. If you take the view that this will be applied to all aspects of industry, of work, we're about to see a huge increase in overall productivity, right? Because I don't know about you, but I don't think we're short of, human race isn't going to stop wanting to consume stuff, right? We've got a massive appetite for consuming. And as we lower the barriers to entry and accessibility of goods and services through price and actually tech, delivery and whatever else it might be, we're going to see consumption increase, right? And so that's also going to increase because we've got time available. So we're saving time, right? We're saving time in many ways. So our ability to spend time on higher value, more interesting stuff. And so if you think about, if we think about that from this productivity perspective, I mean, first of all, do you guys agree with the macro view of that? Can you see an economy which is going to go on a massive uptick through global kind of productivity just being significantly increased by the implication of AI?
I believe so. It's really hard to argue the opposite, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Abundance.
Yes, it is. There is an argument where, like you've just said there, about the deflationary effect of that, which is this offset of productivity increases, but the price of goods and services could lower.
But we'll consume more, I believe. So I think it will somewhat even out.
Yes.
And maybe even go beyond. Like it will go beyond in many, many, many areas. Like the compute example. Like the more AI that's available, the more that we will take. We need more GPUs. Yeah. Like put them in space, put them anywhere. Like we'll take them. Other areas might not be as optimistic in, but for the most part, I think even if the TAMs come down from a pricing perspective, the overall TAMs will increase from a consumption perspective, is my belief for most of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Consumption will increase. I mean, look at us. We all have a roof over our heads. We have enough food to eat. And there's lots of people in this city and all across the world who who can buy anything they want, yet they still choose to work. It's been 100 years since John Maynard Keynes predicted that in like 20 or 30 years, society would be able to produce enough so most people would just spend their time in leisure. Mm-hmm. But that just hasn't happened, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen over the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah. And what do you think the implications will be on the job market then? So we've spoken about this, the decline of existing roles. The argument to it is the innovation of new, right? So I sit here quite often with people looking at them and saying they maybe got wearable tech. You've spoken about the new devices that Sam Altman and Johnny Ives are working on. There's going to be an abundance of new opportunities, new stuff, isn't there? That comes from this kind of revolution.
Absolutely. I think it's very hard to predict what the jobs of the future will be. But one thing's for sure is that it won't be the same jobs that we have today. We keep on saying most white collar, a lot of blue collar, right? People think, blue collar is safe. There's actually a lot of industrial work which is repetitive enough to be automated using AI. I think it's still TBC what those jobs will be. I also think that there will be a large swath of jobs that will be purely performative. Doctors who dish out diagnosis given to them by AIs, two drivers that sit in self-driving tubes, right? We're going to have a lot of performative roles that are in place because people demand them, everyday consumers demand them. Yeah. And also because of government regulation and protectionism.
It makes a lot of sense what you're saying, yeah. There are self-driving car experiments happening in Texas right now with Tesla, and the government requires a human to be sitting in the self-driving seat where the steering wheel is moving, but they've got their hands on their lap. And I understand during those training phases, they might need the human to have a need to grab it in case of an emergency. I haven't really heard about many examples of that happening, during those trials. Eventually, I think those social, those political, those cultural norms will go away, like as the next generation comes, and it will kind of be weird for a human to be driving a car. You'll feel a little bit, you won't feel as safe if you get into a taxi and there's a person driving it. Yep. But yeah, these things are gradual, and they'll happen faster than we realize because the tech will just be so good that it will be hard to fight against. But yeah, you make a good point.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? When you talk about that, I feel like the technology is going to evolve at a much more rapid pace than our ability to adopt it. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, not at all. I mean, we're entering what people used to describe as the singularity, but which what a lot of these books, maybe were written a few years ago, might call it. I think now we use the word AGI, I suppose, now, but it's a very similar thing. And it's the concept of it is that the tech gets to the point where it's impossible to stop or control or slow down, and more progress happens in a day than used to happen in a year, and then eventually more progress happens in a second than used to happen in a lifetime, and that will just transform every aspect of our lives. And I don't think it will take 1,000 years for that to happen. Some of the smartest people in the world that wrote these books predict anywhere from 2045 circa plus off, give 5-10 years on that. And I don't think it's that unlikely to believe that will be the case. There are people that make the argument that the children being born alive today will never die. They'll have the option to live forever if they really want to. Yeah. Which might sound crazy, might sound a little bit, out there. But give it 20 years and then we revisit that question if it is crazy. Because as the AI self-improves and gets better and better and better, we won't need to do a lot of work at that point. It will just automatically offer, and as it's connected to hardware that physically can move things around, we could enter the dystopian WALL-E type situation. We're all sitting on a chair and there's an iPad and we're just not doing anything. And I hope it's not that, but it certainly could be. Yeah.
Going back to the question on what are the jobs of the future, I think nobody really knows. We do face the prospect of having huge swaths of our population being permanently unemployed. For sure, we're gonna be cutting out large amounts of white collar jobs, blue collar jobs. I think the only jobs that we can confident are to be safe, at least for the next 10 to 20 years, are blue collar work, blue collar jobs that involve doing technical work with your hands, which humanoid bots cannot do, at least for the foreseeable future. Those are the only jobs I can think of as being safe. Everything else, at risk.
I think you're right. Yeah, the white collar roles will become managers of agents, and there'll be a lot less of those people needed to do that, unless we consume a lot more when it comes to that type of thing. And then on the blue collar side, it's a lot harder with humanoid robotics. I've been to some amazing labs over the past year and seen some of the robots being built, and it's really easy to create a demo where the robot is perfectly stacking the dishes and picking the right items out of the fridge and chopping it up. It's really hard to get that into production, which is why there aren't really any humanoid robotic companies that are mainstream yet, and there's Tesla, there's Figure, there's 1X. 1X are about to start from next year doing for $500 a month, you can have a robot in your home. And what people don't realize that in the small print is that it's controlled by a human. So there's a human with a VR headset on controlling the robot, watching everything that's happening. Yeah. Now, again, they need the training data. That it's going to have to be a required step to get to the point of full autonomy. But blue collar work is going to be automated in a lot longer time period than the white collar work, just because it's a lot more complex.
Yeah. If we were to group the areas of work into categories of their kind of vulnerability or impermeability from AI, how would you group them?
I would say one bucket is low-skilled white-collar work. Completely gone.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I think that if you are a hiring manager and employer, you need to increase the average caliber of your hires, because you just don't need the entry-level workers anymore. You don't need people doing data entry or other types of admin work. That will all get automated away. You need, if you're going to hire humans at all, you want them to focus on, like, at least for now, strategic work, technical work, or orchestrating all the different AI recruiters, right? So the white-collar work that remains for humans will be the more strategic, technical work for people with a lot of experience, very highly educated. I think low-skilled white-collar work completely gone. That's one bucket I would share an opinion on.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, there will be there's an interesting chart which maybe your editor can put up on the screen. My team can send it to you, but it was the job growth and the employment globally, and then when ChatGPT was introduced, and it's just massively gone down ever since. And I show this chart to anybody that tells me that their job is too complex to automate, and that's what people have always said throughout history. And there's 99% of all jobs that ever existed have now been automated in some fashion. And then the blue collar, as we mentioned, will be the last to go. I think certain individuals, like politicians, will maybe even be the last to leave because they never want to give up their job, and there'll always be a reason for them to have that work. But yeah, I think you nailed it. The low collar, white collar work, you're in trouble if that's what you're doing right now. And I don't know if I could wave a magic wand and change that, then maybe, but probably not. I mean, we have to put innovation sometimes, which will benefit the world above what might benefit an individual at the end of the day.
Yeah, the scientific benefits of AI have got to outweigh the kind of medium and short term economic challenges, I guess. But we're very good at addressing those challenges that start to threaten us as a species, aren't we?
I hope so. This time it might be slightly different because of the fact that AI is automating the mind and thinking and decisions, rather than it just automating what a person would do with their hands, like a combine harvester automating a farmer. So it's slightly different this time. But I hope that we figure out new things to do, like we always have throughout history.
Yeah. It's a huge question, and I think nobody really knows the answer.
Nobody has the answer. Yeah.
Thinking about like history, 200 years ago, 98% of the population worked in agriculture. Now it's like 1 to 2%, and everybody else, that 98% of the population has found new work, new purpose. Is that going to happen again? It's a huge question, and we're looking at a time scale that is so big, and looking at a time scale which is going to see so much change. It's so hard to predict. I think it's impossible to imagine what the jobs of 10 years time will look like.
Yeah, my 2-year-old and 6-month-old, if university is still a thing when they're 18, I have no idea what they'll be studying. Physics and computer science are probably the only things which, at least from a first principles perspective, make sense. Mathematics maybe, but I don't know if that will even be relevant for now.
I think it's more likely that they're going to be doing stuff which is really interesting to them.
I hope so.
So yeah, I think it's more likely to be stuff that I agree that there'll be people that are building systems and managing systems, although a lot of that will be automated 15 years from now.
Yeah,
but I can't help but to think that the future will see us spending more time in the areas we love. Do you know what I mean? And hopefully that'll be in sport and entertainment and care and all of these other broader kind of areas.
I think we see that in data. It's clear. I mean, if you look at the past 20, 30 years, the average number of hours worked per worker has already been decreasing. And we're just going to keep on. We're going to see that continue to decrease. Yeah, it's super interesting. We got a question on what jobs will be available in the future. Nobody can predict. I would say the number one advice that anybody should take when thinking about what skills to develop is the best skill you can have in tomorrow's world is the ability to learn a new skill, because the tools you need to be good at, what you need to be good at, will just constantly change. Like for instance, today we hear every talk about how they want to hire people who know how to use N8N or other like AI native tool. It's going to be a different set of tools tomorrow, and after tomorrow it'll be something else different. And so you just need people who are very comfortable working in a very fast-paced world where they need to adapt themselves to new tools, new skill sets on a continuous basis.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I was actually thinking about my son. If I roll back 5 years ago, he's 6 years old now. I was thinking I was going to I wanted to protect him from gaming.
Sure.
Right.
I'm the opposite. I'm throwing my 2-year-old in the teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but now I can't help but think that I need him to embrace it for that reason, actually, because adapting to different environments and, through tech, through digital experience, is something that you're going to pick up, tremendous skills, and obviously there's a lot of strategic thinking and tactical thinking, responsiveness, which you get from gaming. And I wasn't steering away from it for the longer term. It was more letting him get to a place where he's got some kind of broader interests than just the gaming. But I've more so, for the reason you've just highlighted, I've started to think it's important that actually he really leans into it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that you need to build the social skills and everything else like first.
Yes.
And I'm probably a bit on the extreme end when it comes to some of this stuff. But I feel like gaming is like sports for the mind if it's done properly. There's a lot of slop out there and stuff that you probably wouldn't really bring you much benefit. And if you're doing this 10 hours a day, then it's not going to be very useful. But in terms of, there's been so much studies done that show gaming, there's like a direct correlation between how good you are at playing video games and how good you are at being a surgeon, for example. And this just bleeds over into many, many areas. I think so much of my skills that I've developed in like business and technology have been because I played Tetris and strategy games. And I don't know if there's a direct link that I can form, but at a subconscious level, I'm pretty sure that there's enough evidence out there to suggest that having these sports for the mind will make you sharper and have better memory and mindset, and just the approach of video games. Like, what are you doing if you're playing a game of Mario? You're going through the level. You're learning that if you get the prize, you level up and you become better. You learn how to defeat the enemy, and then if you die, if you lose your life, then you can start a game. Now you can't if you die in real life. As far as I know, you can't quite start again. But if you get knocked back and experience failure, you can pick yourself up and try again, and it teaches you that resilience of just going and going and going until you win, until you complete the level, until you. Yep. And if you treat business, if you treat your career, if you treat your life as a video game. Firstly, it's a lot more fun to approach it that way. But secondly, you'll win a lot more.
Interesting, yeah. I've never played video games. My mom never let me, and I don't. But Elon Musk, and you'll get a lot of industry titans say what you say, which is it is a big exercise for the mind. Yeah.
You done a lot of reading though.
I do, yeah. But maybe that's why I got into reading, because my mom just said you got to read books. So I was just stuck reading books. So yeah, I guess that was given some respect. But going back to the question on what skills will be useful in the future, I think people that are highly skilled, that are very ambitious, should be excited for the world of tomorrow, because AI, I think a lot of people mistake AI as being a force equalizer, right? They think like, oh yeah, and we can now spin up a website, a landing page, or write an essay, right? And they'll think, oh, it's a force equalizer, but it's actually a force multiplier. I think whereas previously an A-star player would have an output that is 5x that of a B player, with AI, it's 10x. And that multiple will only increase in the future. So if you are a high agency person, very intelligent person, great at like big picture thinking strategy, and you can harness AI, there's huge opportunities for you in the world of tomorrow.
We've seen this in software engineering as like the first big example, whereas historically we had a 10x developer, a developer who can do 10 times the amount of work and quality as a regular software engineer. And now, because of these tools like Lovable and Bolt and Replit and Claude Code, it's a 100x engineer. If you're using these tools compared to somebody who's manually writing all the code themselves, it's not even a fair competition anymore. I'm not saying vibe coding and then just putting stuff into production is the way to do it, because there's big security issues there, and you still need the developer to review the code and make changes and clean it up. But in terms of like what you're able to achieve and the fact that the code can be written whilst you're sleeping, it's a perfect example of what you're describing, and we will see 100x recruiters and 100x accountants and 100x whatever in the next couple of years as well. What I'm really concerned about is the people that don't adopt and they get left behind. They will have no chance of competing, regardless of what domain they're in, if they don't start innovating right now. It's innovate within the next 6 months or die and get left behind, basically.
There's no doubt. I think that the adoption of it is critical. The learning and understanding of it. Everyone I talk to, I encourage them to get on an AI course and start to understand how to prompt and how to, embrace this technology. I can't help but think, though, that when you talk about the types of people that will be able to embrace those technologies, that is the opportunity for the younger generation, like we spoke about earlier. And albeit it's difficult to see where there are opportunities for them in these larger organizations, I can't help but think that the startup world will be littered with much younger operators.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Totally agreed. I think I mentioned earlier, I know a lot of people, I've worked with people in my career who are 40 plus, it's not even that old, who are just not able to adapt to the new suite of tools that they need to use. We talked earlier about how there is how young graduates, people entering the workforce are facing a lack of jobs because all the low-level work has been automated by AI. There's also a huge opportunity. If you can prove that you're good with AI tools, there's a huge opportunity if you're young. And also, luckily for young people, there's so much opportunity to train, to self-learn on the internet these days. Yep. You don't need to wait until you're in a job to start learning these tools. Get out there, start building your skill sets with AI, and you'll put yourself in a really great position, not only to get a job, but to compete against the older workers.
Well, yeah, the more domain experienced guys. Let's just talk about something else. Let's move on to risk. So there are loads of risks to AI in recruitment. The biggest one that comes up so much is bias. How are you guys addressing that?
I think the real biggest risk is not doing it at all and then getting left behind. But we've covered that. So I guess in bias, I feel like it's often an excuse people make as to why they shouldn't use these tools, and they hide behind that. Whereas the data that we've looked at when we've ran these analyses are that actually it's a lot fairer for the candidate. Like, we are SOC 2 compliant, ISO 27001, whatever the terms are, GDPR compliant. We've gone through rigorous red tape to get all these certifications. So we have 40 different things you can download on our trust center on our website to show all the checks that we've done to reduce bias on our systems. And there is regulation coming out about this stuff soon, which I think is quite important and needed, because you don't want anybody being able to spin up systems which can download a CV and potentially harm a candidate's chances of getting employment. So there's certain elements where you need to do this. I feel like ultimately, though, if the AI is analysing the resume and putting the best person forward to the hiring manager for the job, and they're interviewing people based on the skills and experience rather than their name or their background or what country they're from, I think that's a much fairer experience for candidates. It's way less biased, and ultimately it's a lot fairer. I'm not saying humans are consciously biased. Some people are, but most of the time people are pretty normal about this stuff, but unconsciously they might be making decisions which are stopping the right candidates getting the job. And if we remove that bias by using AI, it's just a much fairer and better candidate experience.
Totally agree. I think every piece of research suggests that humans are consciously or subconsciously biased, or the decision-making is a lot noisier, and AIs can make better decisions, less biased decisions. It's also true that we do need to put in place checks and frameworks to ensure that AIs don't unfairly replicate real-world biases. That's a real risk. But at the same time, I think that we should be hesitant to over-regulate AI recruiters in an effort to eliminate all bias. Because I think, unfortunately, so long as there's disparities in behaviors between different groups, you will, different outcomes, AIs that are trained on real-world data will replicate those biases. And trying to regulate those biases out of existence just means tying the hands of AI recruiters to an extent that they can't really operate.
Depends what bar you're holding it up against as well, doesn't it? Like you say, because there's no doubt that that there is going to be significant inconsistency in human recruiters, recruitment line managers, the processes that are currently executed.
Yes. You're right. Like, in comparison to just leaving a human alone to do the job, it's already far superior and far fairer and better and everything in between. But you're right. We don't want to over-regulate this stuff to the point where we slow down innovation, because then another nation will not have that level of red tape involved. That's partly a lot of the difference between Europe and like the US, and why the US just really dominates the world of tech in many degrees, because they don't have as much red tape from Brussels and that goes into a lot of these decisions. Some of it is definitely needed, and you don't want to have a cowboy Wild West out there, especially when it comes to sensitive information like candidates' employment histories and details. But yeah, there's a balance that needs to be struck, isn't there? Yeah.
If I went out and spoke to 100 recruitment CEOs and founders today of recruitment agencies, and I asked them, do you want your team to spend more time with your customers? How many of them would answer yes? What percentage?
I mean, if it wasn't 100, I'd be very concerned.
Yes. And so that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because that immediately leans into the fact that they don't have time to do what is the most valuable part of the process.
Correct. Yeah.
Which in itself indicates the scale of the opportunity for automation. Where do you sit with that?
I think you're spot on. I think humans should focus on the things which humans are good at. There's a reason that we're having this conversation, and we didn't send our AI note takers to have it for us. Whereas the AI note-taking aspect, I mean, I've got an app on my phone which could be listening and doing that. It's not, by the way, but it could be, and that's a lot better than me manually doing that admin. Yes. That's my core belief in why what I'm building exists, basically.
Yeah, people value human relationships. Luxury hotels will never replace their receptionist with an AI receptionist. I think the question is whether when you think about like replacing a human with an AI, it's a very multidimensional. It's a very multifactorial decision you have to make, right? You have to ask yourself whether or not how much better the AI is relative to human, or vice versa. And also you have to ask yourself, like, is it worth it given the cost difference, right? Even if you assume that an AI and a human do an equally good job, you have to ask yourself, is the human, 20, 30x, or probably way more better than an AI, because that's how much more it will cost. And you're right. I think there are some instances where the value will be worth it because, in the example you just brought up, the relationship is worth it. The client relationship is worth the effort of having a human in the loop.
The reason I ask is I wonder whether it's slightly deeper as well, because I've got this analogy or this experience where I met somebody the other day at an event. I sit down next to him. He happens to be in tech. We get on like a house on fire. Yeah. Get on really well. We actually have this big conversation about introversion, right? Random topic. Then we find out we're in tech. Mm-hmm. And then because of that chemistry, he wanted to help me on something. I wanted to help him. And so it was the chemistry, the engagement and connection which led to creativity. Does that make sense? Like it was the intersection of where creativity is going to start with that relationship. I walked away from that, reflected on that night, and I was a bit like, do you know what? That's really highlighted to me, just this one exchange, that this isn't about whether I can get the answer to a problem. It's about the fact that I want to get the answer with that person to a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so then we're into actually there are a different set of kind of emotional DNA triggers that have to be fired up in order for me to be the best at what I do and to operate and for businesses to scale. So I just wonder whether that part of it cannot be diminished. What I mean by that is that if we reduce the overheads of an organization by replacing or removing all of the admin people within it. Like we said, the kind of low skilled white collar work. Could all of those people be redeployed into those customer facing roles? Pending skill, right? Irrespective of whether they have the skills and capabilities. But if I've got a business now which is much more profitable, I'm going to obviously come under price pressure from my competitors who are making the same savings. But I do also have the opportunity to invest all of that into that, building those relationships, right, that we spoke about. Is the future of work all about empowering communities to engage much more for that bit that I want, what every CEO of a recruitment agency wants to happen? It empowers it. That's the question I've got.
That's certainly what our customers are doing right now, at least. Like, there's one example, which is a staffing agency that's a customer of ours, and they hire remote workers in, I think, South Africa for businesses. They had a candidate delivery recruitment team of, I believe it was like 30 people before they started using Lisa. Now they have about 5 people doing that job. And they're making more money from those 5 rather than the 30, but they haven't replaced the other 25 people, and just fired them. They've moved them into client work and doing business development and doing account management and that sort of thing. And at least that's what I would encourage people to do. I still feel there's a purpose for those people, and a lot of the skills in recruitment are very transferable to the skills of sales and business development and marketing. So there will certainly be people that just eliminate those jobs, but I feel like if you're smart about it and you're thinking bigger, then you'll do exactly as you've described. You move those people into.
My question is more around, actually, do those sensitivities get heightened in a world of automation? Does that make sense? Do customers, people crave more interaction?
Yeah, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I think whether or not we'll have a human in a role, in a customer service role, in a relationship role, will depend on whether there's a positive ROI on the extra cost. The human is like however much more expensive than an AI. Are their relationship skills, is the output of the relationship building skills worth the extra cost? In a lot of roles, yes. So I mentioned earlier, luxury hotels, a human as a receptionist will be most likely be worth the ROI. Is a human taking your order at McDonald's can be worth the ROI? Absolutely not. Is the value of you interacting face to face with a potential business partner worth the ROI, as opposed to having your AIs interact with each other? 100%. It's all about whether or not it's worth the ROI of the huge extra cost of having a human.
But that's why I'm digging into that, right? Because the reason, look, there's an obvious reason I'm digging to this particular point. We've gone over it 2 or 3 times. And the reason I want to do it is because I want your minds, right? I want to see how you're thinking and valuing those skills and qualities, right? Compared to a traditional operator in the recruitment sector.
Sure.
Who's highly valuing them.
I think Matt nailed it. I think it depends on what those individuals would be selling. In my opinion, if that service is recruitment, that's quite a high value thing that you'd pay money for. I think I would prefer to speak to a person who manages the agents personally. For now, in the long term, that might change, but for now, I'd want that relationship in place. Whereas if I was ordering McDonald's or something, I don't really care. I'd do it through the kiosk and press the buttons. I referenced a piece of software that I bought a few weeks ago. It was quite transactional. I needed software for a particular purpose. I already knew their brand. I thought I was speaking to a person. It turns out I wasn't, but I didn't mind. I called a restaurant the other day to make a reservation. Immediately I knew it was an agent I was speaking to, and I had a huge smile on my face. I was like, this is fantastic. It's not going to mess up the time. It's not going to, get the table number wrong. And it was fantastic. It was way better than a person. So I think it depends on the task. Right now it's starting with the lower level things that you'd pay for money for, and transactional sales. Will it replace relationship driven, higher value stuff like staffing? I don't know, maybe. But there's different people there with different opinions, and based on what your preferences are, you'll probably prefer to do business either with the agent or with the person. I think AI agents will transform so much of our lives, but I don't think it will be a full blanket rule for every job and every area and every purchase.
Yeah, there's always going to be, it doesn't matter how good AI gets, you're always going to have some humans in the loop for some roles. For instance, we're never going to have AI recruiters fully automate the recruitment of a Fortune 500 CEO. Whoever is making that hiring decision doesn't care about saving, however much money on that recruitment process. They'll want a human in the loop. The ROI is worth it. So it goes back to my point earlier that it all depends on whether or not it's worth the ROI. One question I have on my mind is like, even if you have like an AI recruiter that is really good at asking all the right questions, asking Ken all the right questions, and doing all the recruitment work, right? Even if, let's just assume that an AI recruiter would say the exact words as a human recruiter, would you get the same response from a human candidate or a human client, right? Because you just react differently to words depending on where they come from, an AI versus a human. So I think that's a big question for us who work in the AI recruiter industry, right? Like, even if we assume that we have the best AI model, right? Like, is this still the optimal way to drive a hiring process, given that people react differently to AIs?
I believe that candidates are more open and honest when they are less stressed and anxious. And the data tells us that when they're speaking to these AIs, that they want to have the conversation more than going for the option with the person. And when they have that conversation, they rate it at a higher score than the old way of doing it. I don't know how I feel about that as someone who was a recruiter for 10 years, but that's just what the data tells us. And I think that the fact that they're less anxious and less worried about human bias, they're more likely just to be themselves and be more natural. So I think they give a more honest and better answer. I can see how somebody could make the complete opposite argument, and it would make complete logical sense. But ultimately, I'm just trusted by what the data tells us on this.
When you're interviewing candidates, you don't necessarily mostly care about how happy they were with the interviewing process and how comfortable they were. To a certain degree, you want to test their ability to react and speak under pressure with the human, right? Because that's how you want them to operate most often in the working world.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another reason why these tools are so powerful, because if you are limited by your time and you can only do, 5 interviews before you make a decision on a person, whereas if the AI can do 500 interviews and the AI can ask questions that you would have no idea, like it's something technical on their CV and you don't really know if they've worked with that technology, and then you hire them and then you send out that they were lying, whereas if the AI can really uncover the answer, the AI can quickly throw up a challenge for them to solve, and it's really interactive and it's two-way. The candidate's mind is blown that this is the most intense, incredible interview they've ever done in their lives, and it's way better than, no disrespect, but just speaking to a HR administrator who is just ticking boxes of they're the right salary, they're the right location, they've got the visa, they've got that keyword on their CV. All right, we'll hire them, we'll give them a go, we'll pay the agency 20 grand. Like, I think doing it intelligently using the latest tech is just far better than, I'd rather have a laptop and a keyboard to send a message rather than doing it with a carrier pigeon. I keep using metaphors and analogies, but I think they're a really great way to visualize some of this stuff. Yeah.
The big question also is around the limited information that is available. For job specs are notoriously poor.
Yes.
And actually, they give you a very one-dimensional view, really, of the role and the organisation. So,
correct. Yeah.
Big argument a lot of people will have, and a lot of hope that recruiters will have, is the fact that the AI recruiter can only get you so far before you really get to understand cultural fit and more nuances around the role. Where do you guys sit with that?
Certainly. I feel like that cultural side is a conversation that right now should be had between people.
Yep.
And I'm a big believer in that you should hire based on culture add and not just culture fit. Otherwise you get a company full of people that look and sound the same. We create a lot of free tools for candidates. Like, you can type in a company's website and the AI will Lisa will do a full analysis on that business. She'll look at Glassdoor reviews. She'll look at information that was said online about the business and give you a full breakdown of that company. We give all this away for free to candidates with no limit on credits, just because we want to give as much value as possible for not just companies to make the best decision on who to hire, but for candidates to make the best decision on which company to work for. But ultimately, right now, I think, yes, my agent speaks to the human to determine if they're going to be the right fit, and then eventually my agent speaks to your agent to do that initial screening, and then when the people get together, it will be about, do they get on rather than can they do the job. Like I see a world in a couple of years where every single time you want to hire, you tell the AI recruiter what you need, you click go, and then the next day you've got 3 events in your calendar scheduled where you're going to have a coffee with somebody, and those people are all super qualified for the job. They're all interested, they're the right salary, they've got the right skills, the right experience, and you just need to see who's your favorite. You pick your favorite, basically.
I think that AI recruiters will get very good at understanding the culture of clients. As much as a lot of people like to think that their company culture is unique, it's not. Most often it's quite formulaic. There's a lot of very common principles by which companies abide by. And yeah, AI recruiters will get very good at understanding your company culture when speaking to you as a client and testing for that in the interviews.
Yes. So then it just comes down to the semantics and the nuances of that team or that division or the personalities and people which are within that. When I look further forward, do you have in your roadmap, tonality analysis and this kind of stuff?
Yeah, we're already experimenting with a lot of this. So much of communication, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it and your body language, which is why we prefer video interviews rather than what most of our competitors are doing with audio only. I feel like listening to a voice conversation of somebody is a really poor way to assess if they're going to be a good match or not. But if you watch a video and you see how they behave and their actual body language and their tone, it's a much better way to assess if they're going to be suitable or not. And then that was a really good point earlier. Like we're doing this experiment at the moment where the hiring manager will speak to Lisa, our recruiter, about what they need to hire, and then based on that we're picking up visual information, the transcript of the call, we're combining it all together to put them into almost like a personality score. So when we're looking at candidates, we're not just looking at who's the right fit on paper with the technical skills, but also the right fit personality wise as well. Now, I don't think we should fully automate the decision that's made at the end of that. The human should still meet the options and pick the favorite, but as much as we can do to give the best shortlist possible, not just in terms of skills and experience, but in terms of culture fit and personality as well, then the better, really. And it's only going to get better and better and better. Yeah.
Yes. Today it's the worst it'll ever be.
It is.
We hear it all the time, don't we?
And there is a limit to how good a human can be at this stuff. I mean, I've met thousands of recruiters throughout my career, and some of them are absolutely exceptional, but I've never met one quite as good as like Lisa or an AI recruiter. It's just not possible in terms of how many calls they can make, how many resumes they can do, how many people they can screen, how many people they can find, the conversion rates, the satisfaction scores, the honesty. It's impossible to compete. So rather than competing, why don't you just work together to get a much better result?
So guys, let's talk about the next 3 to 5 years. Come up with 3 milestones, 18 months from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. The evolution of recruitment and tech. Where are we?
I'll let you go first so I can think about my answer.
Sure. Usually when I answer, I kind of make it up as I go along, but but let's try that. I think the 3 key things. So from a product perspective, we know that, like you said, this is the worst it will ever be. These tools will get better and better and better at a faster and faster rate. So every aspect of recruitment, which the agents are already doing, whether that's reviewing a resume or doing an interview, they'll get better and better at doing that, and they'll get faster and cheaper. And then they'll start to unlock new capabilities, which previously they weren't trained for. The exciting part around that is we won't necessarily even need to train a lot of that stuff. It will start to figure it out itself and do things. Once you start setting up the self-improving mechanisms, that's when it starts to get really, really powerful. So the product will always improve, whereas with people, there is somewhat of a limitation in place. So that's kind of number one. I guess number 2, I feel like the market is super early right now, and there's a handful of businesses that are like a year or two old that are going after these problems. We'll start to see some winners and some businesses emerge that become the brands and become the chat GPTs of hiring. That's where you go if you need to make a recruitment decision. LinkedIn is wonderful, but it's 20 years old. It's the worst product that I have to use every single day. It's so much slop on there, and their strategy for AI is not what it could be. I hope it gets better and better and improves, and I'm sure it will. They've got some very smart people there, but it's your classic thing of a big business. Just like when we're trying to make a decision internally, we're like a speedboat. We can very quickly iterate and make things happen. When LinkedIn tries to make a decision, it's like a huge cruise ship. It takes months for them to even make the decision to turn. The speedboat's already gotten there.
Yes.
So there's that aspect of the tech will get better, some winners will emerge, and I think ultimately what I'm most excited about is that the candidate experience will improve. Like, if you ask any person about their experience with recruiters, it's usually negative. Now, I'm not saying that across all recruiters, because I was a recruiter for 10 years, and I feel like I did a really good service. But there are certainly a few bad apples that kind of paint that industry in a negative light. And it's not even necessarily recruiters' faults a lot of the time. It's just they don't have time to get back to all the candidates. So most people get ghosted. They don't have time to give real instant feedback, but recruiters can instantly tell you what you were good at, what you were bad at, what you need to improve at. So that would be my summary. I think products will get better. The market will start to consolidate around a few winners. And I think the candidates' lives will get better and faster and more jobs will happen. And that's the part that I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah, I have a similar view. The market will get increasingly dominated by AI recruiters, either autonomous, like either end-to-end AI recruiters or AI-enabled human recruiters. I think the headcount of people working in recruitment and HR overall is going to decrease by 70 to 80%. I think we're going to deliver better candidate experiences. And importantly for our clients, I think the cost to hire will decrease massively. I think in 5-10 years time, the idea of calling a human to find a job will sound ridiculous, at least for most people who are not in super senior exec roles or super in-demand skill sets. I think the big question is whether or not we see a consolidation in the industry around a few big AI players, which will mean that actually perhaps we won't get the really low prices we may hope for. Or whether or not we get a very fragmented market full of interoperable AI recruiters working together.
Mm.
I think another question is, and this is jumping to another topic, is whether or not blockchain comes into play in the recruitment space. I could talk about that, but
yeah, most likely. I mean, I know less about blockchain than I do about AI, but when it comes to blockchain technology, there's certainly large parts of the recruiting process which, if they were on chain, it would be better. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times that a candidate has sent a resume to a recruiter and then it's just been leaked and then spread out across a bunch of companies, and they didn't give their permission for that resume to be sent to those 500 companies. Whereas if there was a record of that on the blockchain within a ledger, that would be fantastic, because it would reduce the risk of that happening. And when it does happen, you'd be able to very quickly work out who leaked that information. I think with references, it would be fantastic if you could get them done once, get them verified on the blockchain, and then you don't have to redo the same references over and over and over again. And there's a few other parts of the process that blockchain could certainly improve there. I love crypto. I got in like super early and very, very happy with how that's performed in some areas. But I think the wider, I mean, that right now is like the killer app for blockchain, I guess Bitcoin, and Ethereum to a degree, but there's a lot more that can be done in that space. And I think recruitment is an obvious place for a lot of that technology to be adopted.
Yeah, I think that with blockchain, it would be amazing for the industry, for end users, but bootstrapping that process will be very difficult. But there's a huge opportunity, right? So for people listening who aren't familiar with blockchain, the main thing to know is that it's a public database with verified data. And that just means that we all share a single source of truth. And that just means that we can reduce fraud, increase trust, we can increase efficiency, and also just reduce the pricing power of recruiters, because as we discussed earlier, a big moat for everybody is, for like recruitment agencies, is data. If you wrestle that moat out of their hands, then that's less pricing power for them. So to give you an example, I could go out of how blockchain would work, right, in a recruitment context. Today, right, I can go home and I can apply to a job and say that I was the CEO of Google. But I cannot get Google to publicly attest that I was the CEO. And that's what would need to happen if I wanted that record to be on a public blockchain, right? So that means we can't lie. And I think will be very important in an age of super intelligent AI. Not that that's not to say because it's always been possible to lie, but it's easier than ever to make up a story that makes sense, which is untrue. And I personally have spoken to a lot of hiring managers who say that there is an increasing amount of fraud or dishonesty in applications, in recruitment in general. And I think blockchain can help solve for that to a very large degree. I'm also very excited by, you mentioned earlier, right, candidates having their CVs leaked without their consent. I think this is another area where blockchain can play a very important role through ZK, zero knowledge technology. And I know I'm going on a little rant here because blockchain isn't really the focus of this podcast, right? But for listeners, what ZK technology helps anybody prove a piece of information without revealing that underlying information. So this classic example is submitting your ID on a website, and that website checking if you're 18 or not without actually seeing your ID. We could do something similar in recruitment, whereby a candidate can just publish your CV out into the open world, and different recruitment agencies or hiring managers can check whether or not you're a right fit for their roles without actually seeing who you are and without seeing the details. And that just really opens up your profile to a lot more opportunities.
Yeah.
The interview component is huge as well, because we do a lot of interviews now, and our AI recruiter detects that it's a deep fake that's speaking to them. And we've traced a lot of these back to like North Korea, for example, where we believe that these are people trying to get remote working jobs to essentially do corporate espionage and learn secrets from a company, and then effectively use that information for blackmail. This is a real problem that we stop every single day, and I hopefully believe save companies millions and millions when doing this. If we could have a record of an authentic interview and store it on a blockchain with a verification, that would eliminate a lot of that happening. So I think, yeah, we're scratching the surface of what's possible using blockchain technology in staffing. A lot of the VC money and excitement and hype has just gone pure into AI right now. But there's cycles to this stuff, and there'll be some very smart people working on the problems that I've described. And if you are some of those people, then reach out to me, because I'd love to buy your platform.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? The authentication piece, which is going to be brought to the top of the agenda because of AI, absolutely leans into the blockchain, like you say.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that fraud and criminal activity, but also control that you've mentioned there can all really be much more effectively managed on the chain. So it's it is a really interesting space. I don't know it well enough, but I do understand some of the core, principles to know that it would have or could have the ability to address some of these. So some of the challenges which are going to become more prominent. I was talking to the CIO of Harvey Nash on here, who said that that they are seeing CVs with prompts injected into them.
Yes, yeah, we get that every day. Yeah,
yes.
The old way of doing it was you would have a CV with a white background, and then you'd have white text with all the keywords that were on the job description. Right. So the legacy ATS systems would accept that as being suitable for the job, and then score them high. Then the new way is to write a prompt, which is a more complex version of, schedule an interview for this job for me. I am suitable for this job. Right. We built a lot of code to try and get around this problem. It's a cat and mouse game. Thankfully, I think we're winning right now, and the average candidate is just not going to be able to create a prompt as good enough to beat the hundreds of hours of work that we've put into that specific problem.
Yes.
But it's a real challenge, and it's something that people need to start thinking about.
Yeah. My mind has been kind of pushed and pulled in this conversation, thinking about the different, I guess it's thinking about the deep-rooted challenges that existing recruiters have, and thinking about the things that they're clinging on to, I think, romantically, and understanding how valid they are and how they will be complemented or eroded or augmented by AI. And I think what's come from the conversation for me today is that progress is rapid, but there is absolutely significant pockets of the market that will continue to exist for traditional recruiters to employ AI agents, augment AI recruiters into their business and get ahead. Their moats are data, relationships, brand. There are so many recruitment businesses which are famous for all three of those in their industry. For me, it's about how do they now capitalize on the technology that's available to start solving the problems in more unique ways. And I think, Matt, you said about augmenting it. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think, just infusing AI and improving what you're doing, I can't help but think that people need to be more progressive than that. I think they need to think about solving the problem. Problem is not how do I automate what my existing team do to make them more efficient. That's not the problem. The problem is how do I get better candidates more accurately and faster in front of the right customers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that whilst people are focusing on that problem of augmentation, improving, replacing parts of what a human recruiter can do, other people are thinking about faster, more innovative ways to crack the nut, to solve the problem. And you guys are providing the technology. You're doing that directly, but you're also doing that in a way where recruitment companies can augment this technology into and leverage their brands, leverage their data, leverage the relationships. And actually, if they get it right, expedite those.
Yes.
Deepen those relationships. Am I right in saying that, or where do you sit with that summary, guys?
I think we're all directionally in the same agreement. I think this is inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yep.
We all are not on the side of fighting it. We're on the side of embracing it and going all in to the extreme, basically. And I hope people listening will join us on that journey as well, because these tools can transform everything about your business. They can help you hire much better people, much faster, much cheaper, and do it in a way that reduces all the admin, so you can focus on what's important. And if you want to embrace us on that journey, then contact each of us, and we'll help you do that. But if you if it's not for you, then that's fine. I just worry if you'll be able to talk about this in a few months from now.
Yeah, it's an opportunity and a massive risk. There's no doubt there's a lot of people that will get burnt, that will get left behind. My advice for anybody, and this is not unique advice in any way, is get to know AI. And I don't mean like get good at prompt engineering. I mean, get into the details. I would give this advice to team leaders, company leaders in particular, because I think a lot of them are used to operating at a relatively high level in quite tall organizations. Organizations are going to get flatter, and you have to get deep into the details of how AI is embedded into your company. So get into the details and don't outsource that responsibility to somebody reporting into you.
Yeah, a couple of really, really practical things that anybody listening can do there would be, number one, make it when you open up a new tab in your web browser, make it default to ChatGPT or whatever preferred tool that you have, because most people it opens up Google or Bing or some other platform. If you just get into the habit of every time you turn on your laptop, ChatGPT is there, usage will go up 10 to 20% instantly. Another thing is, whatever you used to Google, just start asking ChatGPT instead. It will just get into the habit of having that back and forth. Use audio when possible. There's a lot of great tools where you can just click a button, talk for 20 minutes, context dump, click go, and it'll give you an incredible deep research answer. And then I guess number 3, just pay for these tools. Don't use all the free terrible versions. I mean, I say terrible, it's like super intelligence in your pocket still, but just pay for the best version of it. Pay, if you can afford $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus, then go for it. If you can afford 200, it's worth the investment. I don't work for them, but I'm telling you, you should do it. And ask the question to the larger language models, what based on how much I talk to you, what percentage of users am I in based on usage? And if it's not saying between 1 to 3%, then you need to use it more. Because if you're in the top 1% of users, you'll start to figure out new ways to use these tools in your life. My average chats within like ChatGPT a day, it's got to be more than 50 at this point, in like new conversations that I start. In the 2 hours or whatever we've done this podcast, it's probably been the longest that I've gone without using an AI tool in my podcasts are half an hour. So this has been a little bit longer than most of the time I wouldn't be GPTing something. But if you follow those little bits of practical advice, pay for the tools, get the best versions of them, make it your web browser, so you're constantly using it every single day, and just make it open as a new tab, you will be able to run rings around people in no time at all.
I agree with all your advice. I would go one step further, actually 2 steps further. I would say number 1, or number 5, I should say, is build AI workflows. Use N8N, because your company will need to do it, and people in your team will need to build them. And so you need to understand the work that they'll need to do. And number 6 is study the documentation of platforms like LangGraph, LangChain, right? Understand how truly like AI apps work. And to do that, you need to get into the documentation, which is digestible if you spend enough time reading it. Don't just spend all day using a chatbot and think that you're AI native.
Yeah, with the documentation, I really struggled with that side. Because I got 2 kids under 2, so I can't really sit and read. I context dumped it into Notebook LM, and it just turned it into a podcast for me. And their new interactive mode is fantastic. So as the 2 AI podcasters are speaking back and forth on the information, I can click a button and jump in with questions, and it will give me the answers. So that's fantastic for people like me that might not have enough time to do the reading.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a good. I'll try doing that. By the way, actually, another piece of advice I would give to non-technical company leaders, founders, and assuming we're both non-technical, is don't underestimate the level of impact you can have in technical decisions when it comes to AI. AI, at the end of the day, is natural language. You're dealing with developers who are working with these non-deterministic language systems. And if you can understand the documentation, you can really get involved in the decision-making when it comes to building your AI stack. I've been very pleasantly surprised with the contributions I've been able to make. So yeah, get out there, read the documentation, and you'll surprise yourself.
Embrace it, guys.
Yes, that's the key thing.
Brilliant. Well, look, best of luck with your journeys. Thank you for taking the time out. Greatly appreciated. And I'm super interested to see just how well this conversation lands. I think it's a really important conversation for recruitment founders and people in the industry to hear, because it would give them great visibility as to what's going on, the direction of travel, and how they should be thinking. So thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Good to see you both.
Cool.
Cheers.